Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. I know we'll have a few stragglers, but first and foremost, this is exciting for us. My name is Meredith. For those who don't know you, I'm with the section office, and I'd like to recognize a few people here today, including Marty Hall, who's our education chair. Marty introduced us to Ryan a few months ago, and we've done some online programs, but this, outside of the teaching symposium, is only the second in-person program we've administered since 2020. So it's exciting to be with you all, and I know that the two of them have a lot of really great content to share with you today. So quick bio on both of them. Thor Parrish, PGA professional here actually at Quail Creek. He went through the Florida Gulf Coast University PGM program with Marty. I don't even know how I can talk about all your accolades. A fitness guru. He is certified in TPI. He's a CrossFit trainer. Has a very large junior golf program here. It's just one of the most passionate PGA professionals that I've ever come in contact with in my 16 years here with the section. So appreciate your desire to get back. This day today is all his in the making. So it was his thought to have you all here for education. So we're looking forward to it. And then Ryan is a dual athlete, NCAA athlete, played tennis and soccer, pretty incredible. Is a dietitian and nutritionist, spent some time with the IMG Academy, and has worked with countless professional athletes from the WNBA to the NBA to most recently the MLB with the Tampa Bay Rays, if I'm not mistaken. So before I totally butcher their resumes up, one more introduction, I'm going to turn it over to them, is we also have our career consultant, Kathy Grayson, here today. If you don't know Kathy, during the break, please take a minute to introduce yourselves. Kathy has been an incredible asset to all of our PGA professionals. She's dedicated just to the South Florida PGA, and we work very closely with our team. So thank you for what you've done for our membership as well. So the floor is yours.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, this was kind of my big idea right here to organize something like this. And I am through and through a PGA professional. I fell in love with the game of golf at a young age, 14 years old. I played at a golf course, actually in Fort Myers. And it was my grandpa's new club he just joined to. And at the end of that round, I'm like, this is where I want to be for the rest of my life. How do I do this? So I talked to a PGA professional, the one who was in the pro shop. He directed me to the Florida Gulf Coast PGA Golf Management Program. And I was at that time 3 years away from graduation. I met Tara that day, and I saw my whole future in front of me. Through that organization, I realized that really my niche, my passion comes from teaching and coaching. And I decided to specialize in the fitness entity. So I got my TPI certification while still in the golf management program. I circled all of my internships so I could get as much teaching experience as I could. I worked in La Quinta, California, Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and then I actually took an internship at the Urniel's Golf Performance Academy in Vietnam. And while there, I was their acting director of golf fitness, because at the time they weren't there. So I kind of stepped in that role, and I really saw how the two can be combined together. We would go from the lesson tee to the gym to the golf course, and it was just a phenomenal experience. And so when I graduated, I knew I wanted to continue my education in the fitness industry. I had all my accolades as a PGA professional, but I needed to walk the walk with the fitness professionals as well. So I decided to get my master's degree. I got my master's degree from Cal U in Pennsylvania, specialized actually in golf performance. So it's an exercise science master's degree. I'm the first person to specialize it in golf performance. It's in conjunction with their PGA program. And so hopefully we're going to get a lot more young PGM professionals following that suit. But when I thought about everything I've learned and all the information out there, it's all great information, but it's difficult to decipher, and it's difficult to see it apply to us as PGA professionals in our day-to-day life. And so I've really set this goal with this program and the continuation of it, hopefully into a lot broader fields, that this is going to be us taking the best of the new research out there and making it applicable for you, the PGA professional, in your everyday and in your students' everyday life, because that's where we're going to make the biggest impact, is for those everyday golfers. When I came up with this idea, I know there are limitations in my knowledge, and I know one of the biggest misinterpreted aspects of fitness is nutrition. And that's when I was introduced to Ryan, who is an expert in what she does. And so I'll let her just go talk a little bit about why she's an expert. But
Well, great introductions. Thank you so much. I am a board certified sports dietitian. I actually just finished my 5th season with Tampa Bay Rays as the head of nutrition. Built that program, and it's pretty exciting. The last few years, we made it to the playoffs. I don't know, any baseball fans in here? Probably not. Couple baseball fans. And in 2020, we made it to the World Series. So that was really, really exciting and super fun. Just like Thor, I think that's why we connected so much. He and I are both high energy, super passionate about what we do. My path wasn't as straightforward as Thor. I didn't know that I was going to make a career out of sports and nutrition. I knew I loved nutrition, and I was also an athlete at the time. And it wasn't really until I did my master's at University of Florida, and I went to Mayo Clinic for a full year, my postgrad internship to be a clinical dietitian. And there comes a point in your internship where your clinical director pulls you aside and said, okay, you need to think about what kind of nutrition you want to specialize in. And I thought right away, I want to be in sports. And at the time, there were only professional sports dietitians with professional teams. And she just laughed at me. She said, you might as well forget it. She said, that's not going to happen. She's like, 1, it's way too competitive. 2, you're a woman. She's like, good luck. I highly recommend choosing something else. And I remember leaving that day. I'm like, wow, what a bummer. I got to think about something else. And I remember I remember just getting myself together and just saying, I'm going to listen to her. That's bad advice. I'm passionate about sports and nutrition. That's what I want to do. I'm going to follow my passion. And, finished an internship, passed my boards, earned my license. 6 months later, I was working at IMG Academy with some of the top athletes in the world. So I felt so lucky, and I still feel so lucky every day to work in sports. And if this is what you're passionate about, I think all of us are so lucky, because this is just such an incredible field to work in and have the ability to work with athletes and help their performance. And all of you are in such a great spot to really implement a lot of the nutritional discussions that I'm going to be talking about, from the junior golfer, the modern golfer, as well as the retired golfer. So I'm super excited that you're here, and thank you so much for being here.
yeah. So again, we're going to be resources beyond just today. I know that we have our Instagrams on there, but there's also cell phones and all that kind of stuff that we can talk about. But Ryan actually turned down a great job opportunity to work in the NBA because she solely wants to focus on golf. So you out there who should be utilizing her as a resource, because this is where she's going to be for a long time. So we're kind of at the forefront of that. But to kind of start off, I don't want it to take too much time, but I would love to hear from you all, just your name and where you're from. You could say what club you're from. I'm not sure how far people have traveled, but we just want to hear name, where you're from, and maybe your position at your club as well. So we can start over here.
Yeah, my name is Alex Holt. I'm at Kensington Golf and Country Club. I'm first assistant superintendent.
I'm Ken Penner. I'm at Florida Gulf Coast University with the PGA program. I'm our administrative specialist.
I'm Phil Greer. I'm a Forest Glen. I'm the director of instruction.
Mark Milkey, High Ridge Country Club on the other coast, and I'm the director of instruction.
Hi, Clark Sisson. I'm at Quail Valley Golf Club over in Vero Beach. Caddy master, site operations manager.
Steve Panger, I'm from Hunters Ridge, one of the assistant golf pros.
John Gardner. I'm retired. I'm in Florida.
Marty Hall, assistant director of the FGCU Golf Management Program.
Kat Grayson, PGA headquarters for consulting.
I Story Country Club and Bernstein, director of instruction, and also in the med section at Metropolis Country Club, a direct teacher.
David Weiss, director of golf at the Brandon Club in Fort Myers.
Andrew Mazar, student at FGCU.
Butch Wood from Delta Florida Golf Club, head golf.
Reed Kleintop at Professional Highland Woods.
Trent Stewart, I'm from Fort Pierce.
Walter Levitt, I'm from Golf, CC, Hill Pines.
David Siri, I work at
that golf course, I'm an assistant pro at Unstructured, and in Minnesota, I work at the TPC in Wayne, Minnesota, during the summer months. Assistant pro, whatever they need.
I'm Minnesotan too, so.
Jim Lazarko, I'm at Eagle Creek Golf Club. Originally from Canada.
Welcome.
Great.
So yeah, it's great to see that
Okay.
there's a variety of
I found this on the
different
web
PGA
for Ridgeway from
professionals here
Canada.
from,
Check it out.
working in the education department, or whether you're on the grounds team or you are a director of instruction. So the information we are going to be talking about today is applicable for all of you personally and what you're going to be doing through your instruction as well. So the big thing that my entire master's program was about is these 4 pillars of golf performance. When you look at historically what golf instruction has been in, there's been the fitness guy and the golf guy, right? Stay in your lane. Like don't talk about anything else, because that's what it's supposed to be. However, we look at a more holistic approach. So rather than fitness and golf, we look at it in these 4 pillars, which can kind of go in between all of those. Our first one is the physical. This is how prepared your body is to handle the physical demands of the game of golf. That can apply not only to the exercises we're doing, but when you're initiating how a person is going to set up for a chip shot or for a putt, you have to understand the individual's needs and physical limitations to not only execute the exercises, but the golf swing in its many different forms, from putts to chips to whatever it may be. The technical. Technical is the technique of how to swing the golf ball with the highest accuracy and efficiency. Technical is also going to include a lot of the technology that you see nowadays too. So this is the real scientific aspect of it. And you don't have to be in higher education to understand all of those aspects, whether it's the biomechanics of the body or simply the numbers that TrackMan is putting out there. But understanding techniques, number, and proven data is really important for sound golf instruction and a sound golf teaching philosophy. Tactical, and this is the one that we as PGA professionals are really good at. And these are the tips and tricks we give players to play better golf. So this is the application of everything together to that player, right? So yes, it's great. We understand the TPI screen of how a golfer is limited in a certain number of areas, but how are we going to apply that on the golf course? Hey, we can look at the technical aspects of a golf club, the TrackMan numbers. Great, this is great data, but how does that apply to our golfers, right? How are we going to interpret that and position it in a way that that golfer is going to become more successful? Because at the end of the day, the market is going to appreciate excellence, and excellence is through our ability to get our students better. And the last one as well, which is psychological. This is one that is very close to me and was part of my, not necessarily my master's program, but was a little bit of the aspect that I focused on with my research the most, because I'm very involved with junior golf. And so the psychological side of golf is really important, especially when it comes to engaging with people and teaching people. So all 4 of these pillars can be seen in all aspects of golf and fitness. And we as PGA golf professionals and as golf performance experts have to be versed in all 4 of these pillars. You don't have to be experts in all 4 of these pillars, but you should be versed and know when your limitations come in, when you need to reach out to someone like Ryan or someone like myself. So again, talking about physical, some things you might have seen is TPI is normally the biggest one that people have heard about. Is there anyone here who has their TPI certification? Yeah, I would say that's a lot less than there was 5 years ago. There's also, my course was in NASM. So NASM is another personal training site that you can get your certification from. This is man himself, Joey D. Probably all heard of Joey D over on the other coast. He's the guy who was working with Brooks Koepka and kind of the big name when it comes to golf fitness. But the one you probably have not heard of is the Golf Fitness Association of America, which is actually a branch of PGA, which is incorporating golf aspects like we're talking about today for you, the PGA professional. So they do daily and weekly emails sent out through the Golf Fitness Association of America. I'd highly recommend checking them out, because lots and lots of great information, which is actually a branch of PGA. Technical, so again, this is when we're talking about aspects like TrackMan, Flight Scope, any of those ball reading data, any of the new technology coming out, as well as those teaching methodologies that we might be more familiar with. We have like Bender, we have the golf machine, right? These are all things that us as golf professionals have probably read, probably thought was very great information, but how are we going to apply it to our students? Psychological, a few names here that probably everyone have heard of, which is Dr. Bob Rotella. Some awesome books that I highly recommend reading, as well as great gifts for your students, because not only is it a good read, but it's actually gonna make them a little bit better at golf. So Rotella, and then this guy is Dr. Brett McCabe, and he's kind of come into the golf world as of recently, 2019, at our teaching, part of the PGA show, the teaching experience. He was the keynote speaker at the very end. Another great mind who does lots of podcasts and things like that we should be listening to. And then lastly, the tactical aspect, which I covered, is what we as PGA professionals are expert in, taking this information and then applying it to our students for the masses to use and to actually improve their golf. So when I was coming up with this concept of this presentation and making it more applicable for each of us, I thought about a variety of different ways to present the information. And I basically came up to the conclusion with Ryan that the best way is to break our golfers into 3 categories. And so this is how the rest of the presentation is going to go. We're going to go through each one of these categories: the junior golfer, the modern golfer, and then the retired golfer. And we are going to talk about the aspects of the 4 pillars that apply the most to these individual students, because these are really all the golfers that we may see. They are very different from one another, but the information is really applicable for all. And so it's just talking about how we can decipher the information and then position it away best for that individual student. So we're going to start off with the junior golfer, talk about the junior golfer from the nutritional standpoint and all 4 pillars. But at the very end of it is when we'll do our Q&A. So we're going to put a little like 10-minute Q&A at the end of each one of these presentations. All right. So as you're going through it, please write down those questions that you may have, because we will have time for that at the end. However, I want this to also be an open discussion. If there's some pressing information that you're like, I really want to know more about this now, please speak up. We're happy to talk about it then. But we will be having a Q&A at the end. So if you want to hold them at the end, you definitely can. After the modern golfer is when we're actually going to take a little bit of a break, a little 20-minute networking talk, and as well as we have supplements here too. So Ryan's going to be talking about how awesome each one of these are, and we were lucky enough to get some great sponsors to support some supplements for us all to try. So from here, we have junior golf performance. This is very, very near and dear to my heart, because my role here is the owner of the Junior Golf Performance Academy. We have been at Quail Creek Country Club for the last 7 years. I've worked there for the last 5, and I've been an owner for the last year. We see close to 150 kids a week, ages 3 to 17, and have grown not only our revenue and our club's revenue, but as well as the culture in this club. When you leave here, and we will be able to we'll talk a little bit more about the experience at the end on the driving range, but you're going to see tons of kids out here. Members, we have brought 52 family members in the last 3 years and $2 million in revenue from those memberships as well. So the junior golf scene is massive and it is growing. And in this area in particular, if you can harness this and get your members on board with this golf performance model that I'm going to be talking about and its impact, it's going to be huge, not only for yourself, but for the game of golf as well. So I'm going to let Ryan take it from here.
Okay, perfect. Just make sure. Okay. Great. All right, let's dive into nutrition. Is everyone excited?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So as Thor said, we are going to start with the performance concerns for the junior golfer. When I was sitting down kind of thinking about this in my experience working with junior golfers at IMG Academy, first thing that came to mind, especially in the hot, humid Florida sun, right? would be dehydration. So this is a concern for a few reasons. One, really, a lot of junior golfers, they don't have established habits yet. So they might not be drinking consistently. That can lead to dehydration. We also know with dehydration also can come increased risk of heat illness. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. So what happens when we're dehydrated, right? Performance starts to decline. We start seeing deficits in our fine motor control. Kind of important for golf, right? So that's going to be one of your biggest performance concerns for this group. What can we do about it? Well, first of all, making sure that maybe you're setting mandatory hydration breaks where these kids are learning. They're basically learning their hydration strategies at this young age and when to drink. We don't want to wait till we're thirsty, right? Because then we're already dehydrated. So we want to make sure that these kids are learning what it feels like to be well hydrated and what it looks like. Maintaining energy levels on the course. This is also tricky for a couple reasons. Again, this group typically doesn't have those established fueling habits on the golf course. They're still learning, right? They're learning what works and what doesn't work. But another concern is that younger kids don't have the ability to store a lot of glycogen. And what I mean by that is carbohydrate. That's our fuel in golf. It's just stored carbohydrate in our muscles, and they have a limited ability to store carbohydrate. So that means that the pre-competition meal or breakfast coming into a golf lesson, or even snacks on the course, all of these are going to be really important to fuel a junior golfer. Underfueling, as I said, could be a concern from a different standpoint too. If we have a female golfer or even a male golfer that's maybe slowly cutting down on their carbohydrate, maybe they want to drop some body fat or something like that, but then they take it too far and they're underfueling. This would actually present as early fatigue on the course or during a lesson or something like that. So it's important to just kind of keep these kind of things in mind. I had to throw fad diets up here because never in my career have I heard so many people saying, try this diet, try that diet, it's going to give you an edge. Everyone seems to know everything about diets and they think they're an expert. Well, what works for maybe an older brother is not going to work for a growing and developing athlete. It could put him at risk for, early fatigue, underfueling, potentially an injury. And these kids really are vulnerable to nutrition misinformation, whether it's things they're hearing in the clubhouse or, it could be if they're active on social media, it could be something that they're reading on social media. So I think it's important to just kind of recognize if you see kids that maybe they're constantly fatigued, maybe there's some struggles there, they could be developing, nutrition deficiencies or not feeling right. This might be a time where we might want to refer to a sports dietitian. Heat strain and illness. I already mentioned a performance concern is dehydration. We know dehydration increases risk of heat illness. So what can we do about heat illness? Well, there's a few things. The first that come to mind is probably something that everyone's doing. We make sure that the golfers have access to shade and air conditioning, maybe cold towels, fans, things like that. But there's also something else that we can do. We can use a measurement tool called WBGT. I don't know if anyone's even heard of this. Probably like, what in the world are you talking about, Ryan? Well, WBG stands for wet bulb load temperature. And what this is, it's a measurement of heat stress in direct sunlight. And it's different than the heat index because heat index really only looks at temperature and humidity in the shade. I don't know how many of you guys are having golfers play in the shade, but heat index is not really helpful. Something like this can be really quick and easy to give you a figure. And that breaks it down into categories. And there's 5 categories. The first 3 is white, green, yellow. Those are like low to moderate risk of heat illness and with exercise outside. The last 2 are red and black, and that's no exercise is recommended at all when you're receiving, I believe it's an 86. So this model, this is actually a Kestrel model. These run between $300 and $600. And it's actually what the military uses. I learned about this my first season with the Rays. It was 2017, and we actually had about 14 minor league players that had heat illness. And I started talking to a lot of our trainers. I realized there were no protocols to protect the athletes. So I went to the University of Connecticut, to the Corey Stringer Institute. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar. They're experts at what they do. These are literally all scientists and physicians that study heat illness in athletes. And what they recommended was a WBGT tool in the areas where they're most hot and humid. And since we started using this tool in 2018, 0 cases of heat illness. So this is just an option, something to include.
Before you go
Yes.
on there, I think this is just so no one misses that too.
Yeah.
Dehydration is a symptom of heat sickness, heat strain, and illness. It is not the causation of it. And I think that's a big misconception, is that dehydration causes that, right? So when I heard that they're separate, they're correlated, but they're not equal to each other, I'm purchasing one of those right there, because all of our junior golf protocols out in the heat is make sure they're drinking water, make sure you're drinking water, just keep drinking water, when in reality, that's not all you should be doing. There's a lot of other things to play in there. Yeah.
What's that thing do? It's kind of like a radio.
It's very similar. So this is like the reader, and all you do is you just take it out in the heat and you set it, and it gives you a reading. That's all you have to do. It's so easy to use. And then what you can do is you can look at they'll provide a chart as well with it, and it tells you the numbers, when physical activity is not recommended versus recommended, or when it's a low risk for heat illness versus high risk.
Group, or I mean, it's just a standard chart.
No, it's just a standard chart.
So, well, we all know what happened to Corey Stringer, you know, so, how it would be different for you, it'd be different for me. and-
Well,
Why would
it wouldn't though. They're saying that generally in a certain heat condition
Right.
outside, at a certain strength, no person should be
Right.
exercising
Right.
whatsoever. And I think it made a lot of impact for the MLB players and football
Right.
players, because they're on that turf as well.
Right.
Which radiates heat too. So this is just something, again, that we added to our safety protocols for kids in the summer. To again, just make sure that we stay away from all those heat strain illnesses, because that.
So how do you use that? I mean, you just, every once in a while, when you take a hydration break, do you have all the kids register and see where they are on that?
Well, you're not registering the kid,
Right.
you're registering the environment.
You're registering it in the environment.
It's the environment, it's not the
right.
person, you're
It's-
registering the environment, right?
It's
And-
heat.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
and
Sorry,
then-
sorry
so
that I did not.
important
explain it
difference
well.
there, yeah.
Yeah.
important
Yeah,
difference, for
good
sure.
question. I'm glad we clarified.
It's not like a
that.
breathalyzer.
No.
No.
No, I'm glad we got that
Yeah.
straightened out. So yeah, that's great. But anyway, Thor and I were talking about how to use this instrument, and I mean, really a great way is if, okay, we see that the reading is at 86, which once it hits 86, no exercise outside is recommended for anybody. You could move activities inside, just so you could still have something, but they wouldn't be at risk. So it's really more a preventative measure. Okay. So now we're going to go through just a general information on what daily performance fueling should look like for the junior golfer. The focus really is going to be on a variety of whole foods. The goal with these athletes is we're looking to promote growth, development, bone density. Those are the basics. So this is really going to change as we move through to the retired golfer. What I usually recommend here is if an athlete is avoiding any specific kind of foods, or maybe they're a vegan or vegetarian athlete, and you're noticing a pattern of fatigue and they're really struggling to perform, that might be a time where we might want to meet with a sports dietitian just to help optimize growth and development, because we really don't want to see deficiencies develop, because that can set an athlete up for injury, or it can also set an athlete up for more issues down the road, even immune system issues or fatigue on the course. Again, just very basic, the macronutrient intake, and this is just breaking things down into protein, carbohydrate, primarily because these are our performance fuels. Protein and carbohydrate, they do different things in the body. Your protein recommendations for younger athletes are pretty low, and that's because young muscle is very responsive to protein ingestion. And what I mean by that is we only need a little bit of protein in order to stimulate muscle growth in a younger athlete. So 20 to 25 grams per meal, and this should be evenly distributed across the day. Typically what I see with the younger golfers is they don't hit their protein goals at breakfast. They're lucky maybe if they hit 10 grams or maybe 12 grams or something like that. So that's something just to be aware of as well. Carbohydrate intake, the recommendations for golf are actually going to be similar across the board because, you know, as a sports dietitian, we actually dose carbohydrate based on weight. And that helps us to determine what they need for their performance. Carbohydrate really needs to be tailored to that individual athlete's goals and how much they're training. So if their training intensity increases, we recommend a lot more carbohydrate. If they're an athlete that's maybe trying to lose a little bit of body fat, we might go on the lower end of carbohydrate. But really the focus of carbohydrate is going to be from whole foods. These athletes, the younger group, really shouldn't be supplementing with a whole bunch of stuff from here and bars and, you know, whey protein and things like that. We really should be trying to encourage them to get all their nutrition from whole foods. As far as maintaining basic physiological hydration for the body, just half the body weight in ounces. It's really simple. This doesn't include fluids during sport. That would be on top of this. But really just about half the body weight in ounces will help to maintain hydration for those basic physiological needs. All right, so now let's get into the fun stuff. We know already the performance concerns. We know what basic fueling should look like. What does tournament day fueling look like for the junior golfers? The pre-competition meal is so crucial, again, because I mentioned the importance of the glycogen stores. These athletes can't store as much carbohydrate in their muscle as the modern golfers and the retired golfers. So making sure that they are hitting that protein. Protein is crucial, not just for muscle rebuilding and repair, but for satiety. You don't want to get hungry on the golf course. And that's what protein does. Protein makes sure that you stay full so you can focus on your sport and performance and not feeling hungry. And then also the carbohydrate. Carbohydrate is essential because that is your brain and muscle fuel. And we really want carbohydrate to be higher in fiber because what that'll do, it'll give you long-lasting energy. How many people have had like a bunch of sugar and you get that quick energy, right? You get that spike in blood glucose followed by the crash, and then you feel exhausted until maybe you take some more sugar. We don't want that, right? Because then we can't focus. We can't perform our best. We want that nice, long-lasting energy. So lean protein and carbohydrate really are the pre-competition meal focus. And then this athlete should be arriving well hydrated. I always tell athletes, you know, hydration starts early. Don't wait and play catch up once you arrive, because if you're doing that, you're probably going to fall behind. So those are just some recommendations there. Snacking every 2 to 3 holes. Again, just these athletes are going to be using that carbohydrate and protein from snacks in the pre-competition meal to make sure they're able to perform their best. 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour. That's a general recommendation kind of across the board in sport. So, and that's about how much carbohydrate our gut can actually process, is about up to 60 grams. So that's why we say that. So this is all individual based on the athlete's needs. 5 to 10 grams of protein approximately per hour. Again, these two things are so important. Carbohydrates are fuel. Protein helps keep you full so you can focus on your sport and not be hungry. The fluid recommendations come from the American Academy of Pediatrics, and that's about 4 to 8 ounces every 20 minutes. Where electrolytes come in, so not every athlete is going to need electrolytes in golf, and the main reason being you can get your electrolytes from your food. So oftentimes drinking water is enough to keep you well hydrated. Now, if we're looking at extreme heat conditions or you have a salty sweater, I don't know if any of you have worked with a salty sweater, you can usually tell because they have those white rings on their hat or on their shirt. They might need an electrolyte supplement that's high in sodium. All right, so really quick, I threw in this because I just want, this is so important, and I feel like so many golfers are going to rely on coaches and say, hey, what should I be snacking on? I don't really know what should I be doing? This slide kind of tells it all. Again, carbohydrates provide your brain and muscles with fuel. So you've got to have carbohydrate as part of the snack. These are your best options. I threw these up here so everyone could see. Fresh fruit and vegetables. The best kind of carbohydrate, you're also getting fiber, which maintains blood glucose for long-lasting energy. Whole grains. And I threw in legumes. That's really like your chickpea, so think hummus. So it could be carrots and hummus, something like that. And they do nice hummus in those individual packs that don't have to be refrigerated. You can throw them in a golf bag. So products that are higher in fiber, fiber and low in sugar. Again, we want to maintain energy and we don't want blood glucose spikes followed by that energy crash. And then protein. Lean meats, great option. And I don't mean deli meats. Okay, I mean, I guess you could if you had a cooler, but you know, something like a beef jerky or a turkey jerky travels great in a golf bag. Low-fat dairy, whether it's a cheese stick. I've seen some kids actually have drinkable yogurts, so that's a great option as well if they have a cooler. And then making their own trail mix, legumes, nuts, seeds. These are great. Kids love this. And it's great to make your own because then you can control how much sugar is in them, and they can pick out all the things that they love. You know, what kind of nuts they like, what kind of dried fruit they like. You just have to be really careful with how much sugar is in that dried fruit. All right, so this is what I do for almost every athlete I work with, whether they're, you know, an athlete that's just starting sport or up to our professional athletes. I give them a timeline. And that basically, and this is just an example of what it looks like fueling every 2 to 3 holes. Hydration, snack options. So let's start with waking again. Hydration starts early, right? Breakfast for an athlete. A lot of younger athletes too. They might not feel hungry in the morning. They might have a lower appetite. So something like this. This is just the high protein, low sugar granola. I have some great options here for you guys to try, with some Greek yogurt and fresh berries. So something like that. You're getting your protein, right? Greek yogurt. You're getting your carbohydrate. So this is setting this athlete up for excellent performance fueling. Okay. And then you can see here, we do a peanut butter banana sandwich. Depending on how much banana you use and the peanut butter, this could give you up to 70 grams of carbohydrate, maybe, you know, something like 18 grams of protein, depending on the bread. A cheese stick, 7 grams of protein. A banana, to give you a reference point, is about 30 grams of carbohydrate. An apple, also around 30 grams of carbohydrate. So you can see, I don't need to go through all the snacks, but you can at least see what it looks like and how it could benefit a young golfer that's learning. They're learning how to fuel. And they get so excited when they actually master this. It's like the biggest day ever. And then they can just keep tweaking it based on their needs. You can see here, we just did a chicken sandwich for the meal. Again, hitting the protein goal, 20 to 25 grams with some berries and hydrating. And post-tournament, we really want to encourage every athlete to recover within an hour, whether it's after training or whether it's after a tournament, because that is when the muscles are ready to rebuild and repair. So that's how an adaptation occurs, and you keep getting stronger and stronger. So if we can do it within an hour after, that's ideal. And here I just kind of threw in some tacos and, you know, some guacamole and chips. And so this athlete could probably add one more meal. I couldn't fit it on here. Maybe like a 7 p.m. meal, something, you know, probably within that range, just to also take advantage of one more time to turn on muscle growth. And this is my favorite saying that I always tell athletes, because they'll come in and they'll, I forgot. Or I'm like, you know, they don't plan to fail. They really do fail to plan. So as long as they're planning their snacks in advance and they practice this, they'll start mastering it and they'll have the best energy out there.
Yeah, a few things to just go off of as well before we go any further forward. The first one I want to talk about is, she talked in this section right here about electrolytes, right? Which is a big word, right? We all hear, oh, make sure they have Gatorades because it has electrolytes in it. Can you tell us just what exactly an electrolyte is?
Yeah, absolutely. So electrolytes, when I say electrolytes, I'm really thinking of the 2 biggest ones that are lost in sweat. That is sodium and potassium. And what they do, they do so many things in the body. Most importantly, they're responsible for keeping the heart beating. they're also responsible for helping the body hold on to body water better. So if we're in the heat and you're just drinking a bunch of water, but you're not getting any electrolytes from snacks, for example, you're going to just be running to the restroom and your urine will probably be clear, but you still won't feel hydrated. So in those situations, we really want to make sure that we have additional electrolytes, whether we're getting them from food, so salty snacks, fresh fruit has lots of potassium, so that's a great option, or you're getting it from, a supplement, something like this. And I'm going to be talking about these in a little bit. This is just a little electrolyte pack that you can throw in water.
So two biggest ones you said, potassium and sodium.
Yep.
Right? And so when you see Gatorade, which is a hydration superfood, right? It's just salty flavored water. That's all it is. Yeah.
Okay, so when we talk about Gatorade, right, because that's what we all think, right?
Yep.
When you say electrolytes, we
Yep.
all go, what's
Gatorade.
Gatorade? So there's different kinds of Gatorade now. There's
Zero.
Gatorade,
Yeah.
there's Gatorade Zero.
So many
Right.
kinds of sports drinks.
Tons, right?
Well, and then there's coconut water, right? A lot of people are drinking coconut water, and the coconut water is great, but I have one issue with coconut water. It's a pretty big one, especially if you're just drinking coconut water during sport. The electrolyte ratio is flip-flopped, so that instead of being a 3-to-1 sodium to potassium, that's what Gatorade has, it's now super high in potassium, very low in sodium. So actually, it could be causing an issue if that's all you're drinking and you're not getting additional sodium. So that's one thing just to think about. I always have to.
So which one do you want the kids to drink?
So this is my big myth buster right here, right? Them drinking Gatorade on the course does not matter. It really doesn't. It's about the pre-hydration. If they show up dehydrated to start off with, it doesn't matter how much Gatorade they drink. They're underprepared, 100%, right? So it's the same thing with whether we're talking about juniors or modern or retired golfers, right? It's about pre-hydration and what you should be doing. First glass of water I drink every single day has a pinch of salt in it. It's a much cheaper version of Gatorade because it's the exact same thing with no flavors in it. And that's all it is right there, because the salt, it goes into your body and helps you retain that water. You've probably been on a golf course, nice hot day in Florida, and you're drinking glass after glass after glass. And what do you start doing? You start peeing and peeing and peeing, right?
Yep.
And it's normally not because you're getting more and more dehydrated. It's because you don't have enough sodium in your body to retain the water. So you're actually you're drowning yourself with water and then flushing out even more fluids you need. Right?
You're diluting your electrolytes.
You're diluting this was
Which
a
is equally
huge one
dangerous.
for me. This was like a game changer when it came to how is it going to apply to us. When I'm talking about the importance of my students, hey, make sure you show up to today's tournament and grab your Gatorade. No, that's not what I'm saying anymore. Like I would never have a student make sure they grab a Gatorade or anything like that. I'm making sure that they, like when they show up to the lesson, hey, how many cups of water did you have so far? Oh, well, I was at school all day and I think I probably had one glass. I'm like, okay, well, first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we get some fluids in your body right now, whether it be water with a pinch of salt or something like that. But pre-hydration is, you just can't pass it kind of thing, right? Other things I think we should be thinking about as well is just like what we're stocking out at our halfway house, right? So she talked about this glycogen levels rising, or your blood sugar levels rising. I know my favorite snack at the halfway house when I was a kid was a Snickers bar. I just grab that, snack on it halfway through. I feel great for hole 10, 11, 12, and then big old crash, right? You can use that actually to your advantage, right? Don't tell the kids to get rid of sugar entirely. Position at the right time. When does that kid need that sugar rush the most? 16, 17, 18. Save it for the end as a reward almost, right? Hey, if you continue to push through only drinking water, you go here, like you look at this list of food right here. You're telling a kid to eat carrots and hummus at hole 12. What kid's gonna eat carrots and hummus at hole 12? Maybe the kid who gets a Snicker bar at hole 17 will, right? We'll get into that whole psychological aspect in a little bit, but that's a big part of it, right? Is saving those sugars towards the end when they need that push, right? So those were two really big ones for me that I took away, is that hydration is something that you prepare for. It's not something you can make up for. Start early, and all Gatorade is salty sugar. That's really all it is. So, and just think about how you're stacking your halfway house. This right here, one of the best experiences I have is I travel with some of my more high-level golfers, and I will go to the grocery store with them to buy what the 2-day tournament's going to be, right? So that's where it all starts, grocery store. So we'll go there and we'll buy everything, make sure they have a cooler, all that kind of stuff. So again, this is kind of now we're going into from the nutritional standpoint to golf performance aspects or the other pillars. So big things that I'm going to be talking about today is this athletic development model certification. Has anyone taken the athletic development model certification? Awesome. Okay, we'll talk.
Something to say about that too.
Okay.
As a career consultant, many of the director of instruction positions that I've been facilitating are asking for them. So if you don't have it and you want to be a director of instruction somewhere and you're going to be looking for a new job, highly recommend you go through it. I even did it, and I'm not a PGA member. So any coach from any sport, highly recommend this. It's really easy to do.
Yeah, and so we're going to talk a lot about that one for sure. Second thing I'll be talking about is some psychological assessments you can actually be giving your students to help them develop better habits, because at the end of the day, that's really what we're doing for these junior golfers, is they are clean slates, and we get to install all those good habits that we believe are important for their golf performance at a young age. So we'll talk about some psychological assessments you can be doing, and then the physical aspect that I think is the number one big thing missed with junior golfers is loss of midline stabilization or controlling posture. Kids today have C and S posture. If you've ever talked to any TBI professional, it's basically how their spine is shaped. But we're talking about how that is a massive issue and how we as PGA professionals can actually fix that. So going into this athletic development model. So I'm not going to do the whole athletic development model certification course. You can do that on your own. It takes about half a day. It's awesome. It's free through pga.coach. You can log on there. You can upload your profile. There's a ton of other good stuff through pga.coach. I've actually made a couple $1,000s from the students that they've pushed me through pga.coach as well. So again, if you're a director of instruction and you have an independent contract, PGA is marketing you through pga.coach, so you can make some more money that way. The athletic development model is a researched, backed process that kids follow from age 0 to 18 plus. And this is not preference. This is not to build the best athlete. This is literally how they develop as they age, and how each category or each age group, you can see here, 0 to 6, 6 to 9, 9 to 12, 12 to 16, 16 to 23, and 19 plus, have very different athletic and developmental aspects, right? There's a time and place to introduce competitive golf. There's a time and place to introduce more technical aspects. There's a time and place to introduce high-speed training and specialization. When you introduce this is the difference between a kid playing golf for his entire life and quitting at age 12, 100%. And this athletic development model is through and through what we run with our junior golf program here. So again, talking about this, the goal is ultimately, again, to get a golfer to play for the rest of their life. Share a little personal note. My mission in life is to walk 18 holes when I'm 100 years old. So the way I eat, train, and think about golf is so I can achieve that someday. I got to A, be able to have the physical capacity to do it, and B, got to be good enough at golf that I want to do it at 100 years old, right? So those are definitely a driving factor for me. So this is also something that I live and breathe, so the kids appreciate that as well. So let's talk about our active start. Each one of these sections, I have a kid specifically in this age group that I teach. All right, each one of these categories. So you'll see these photos are taken with me in it and the student. The certification is great, but it's important that you see in a PGA professional applying this in their everyday life. So active start, 0 to 6 boys and girls, providing organized physical activity for at least 30 minutes a day for toddlers and 60 minutes a day for preschoolers. Provide unstructured physical activity and active play for at least 60 minutes, up to several hours per day for toddlers and preschoolers. Toddlers and preschoolers should not be sedentary for more than 60 minutes at a time. Provide infants, toddlers, preschoolers with opportunities to participate in daily physical activities that promotes fitness and movement skills. We have over 40 kids under the age of 6 in our junior golf program, and it is growing daily. I get calls all the time about it because I understand these aspects right here. So let's start about the first one right there. At least 30 minutes a day for toddlers and 60 minutes a day for preschoolers. 45 minutes is a sweet spot. 45-minute long classes is awesome. I can run at 3 o'clock, I can run at 3:45, and I can run at 4:30, and then I get all my high school athletes right afterwards, okay? Provide unstructured physical activity and active play. This one is, I think, is really funny because people are like, how do you corral all these kids? How do you get them to do what you want them to do? Well, the research says you shouldn't be telling them what to do. You should be organizing fun drills and activities that give them unstructured play, the ability to explore, the ability to try new things, right? So I can do this on the back of the driving range easily by providing stations to hit in, golf balls to hit, and things to hit at, right? I'm not there telling them exactly how to swing it or how to hit it. It's unstructured play. We're out there generally producing what is golf, right? Now, the parents love it because they get to dress their kids up in this golf attire. They get to come to a beautiful country club. And we also have this big thing called etiquette. Parents love that I talk about etiquette. And I have conversations with parents afterwards about how their etiquette was, right? From 0 to 6, there's very few sports that have professional coaches at it. You think about softball, soccer, and football, volunteer, volunteer, volunteer. It's normally dad or a parent who's there, right? So when a student steps into our lesson tee and we have organized structured play for these kids, and they're also getting a professional coach who at the end cares about their kid, they will come back to us time after time. So this is a really big growing section. I'm just going to say it's not for everybody. You have to have a lot of energy for it. And my rule of thumb, and this goes for all ages, is however old they are is how long their attention span is. So if I have a 4-minute or I have a 4-year-old golfer, we have to do a different activity every 4 minutes, right? Now, it doesn't have to be crazy different, but it could just vary from, hey, every 4 minutes, we're going to change the club. We're going to change the target. We're going to change where you're stationed. But every 4 minutes, you have to introduce something that's different. And that works for all junior golfers, right? So even those kids who are 14 is when I normally initiate that. We need to change every 14 minutes, some different drills, some different activity. But that rule of thumb has really helped me organize some great active start classes. Fundamentals, so that's ages 6 to 8 and 6 to 9 for boys. Practicing becoming more proficient in fundamental movement skills before sport-specific skills are introduced. Emphasize the overall development of the child's physical capacities, fundamentals, movements, and the ABCs of athleticism, agility, balance, coordination, and speed. Teach appropriate and correct running, jumping, throwing techniques, introduce basic flexibility exercises, develop speed, power, endurance using games. So this is really an interesting age because this is where you start to see how girls are going to develop a lot faster than boys. And it's really interesting how quickly that happens. But when you look at a 8-year-old boy versus an 8-year-old girl, there's normally significant difference in the maturity levels as well as strength and balance, right? So at this point, it's also, I think, important not to necessarily separate them, but understand where they are in that development. Are they a young 6-year-old or are they an older 6-year-old? Practicing becoming proficient in the fundamental movement skills before sport-specific skills are introduced. So when I'm working with these athletes, I'm often not necessarily first looking at their golf swing. I'm looking at how they're walking, how they're picking things up, how they're moving, right? I'm looking at more than just their golf swing because their golf swing is moldable and changeable, but the habits and the routine that they're in right now is going to be more seen in their day-to-day activities. So I can see, and again, it's focused on the ABCs of athleticism, agility, balance, coordination, and speed. These kids are still very, very young, but you get to incorporate a lot more fun games now with these kids. So relay races are an awesome way to start off a golf lesson, right? We can talk about a million different ways for a kid to go from cone to cone, hopping, skipping, jumping, running, twisting, turning, which are all aspects of the golf swing, right? Balancing on one leg, spinning in circles, rotating, all those things can be related to golf, but are appropriate for kids. And it's important. And the other one here too is that aspect of fundamental movements before sport-specific skills. I think most parents have been poisoned with the concept of the tiger effect, where he's on TV by age 4 years old and everyone thinks, oh, well, my kid should be, he's 8, he's already 8, right? He should be awesome, right? Well, no, that's not what we're looking for, right? We're looking for to make sure that they're following the fundamentals as well. At this point, I get a lot of parents asking for individualized lessons. At 8, they might see a little bit of potential. Their kid really likes it. Is when they're going to start asking for individual. I encourage, and I would say I almost insist that they stay in a hybrid type program of both group and individual instruction. We find that kids who stay in a group setting stay longer in the sport than kids who individualize and go specialized at a young early age. So even at 8 years old, I'll have parents who are like, no, they really don't like the group as much as the private instruction. I think we just want to do privates. And I'm like, well, that's not what our program's about. We're about this hybrid, holistic aspect of group and the private instruction when we feel it. So we've had some parents who've actually left, came back later, but left because we were so adamant about them being a part of the group instruction.
So how many instructors per, how many kids per instructor?
Yeah, we do a 1-to-5 ratio.
From the age groups from 0 to 6.
Yeah, we do. Again, we implementing this model, having a methodology, having some thought behind all this stuff costs money. We're specializing, right? And so we're more expensive, which is why we keep the ratio small. And so I believe that another big factor is facility usage too, where we are so fortunate to be here at Quail Creek, who has an amazing practice facility and 36 holes for us to play on. But the name of the game is avoid the membership. Stay as far away as possible. And so when we do smaller pods, we can really make sure that we can hide them in sections and not really get in the membership's way. If say we were more of a public or resort setting, I'm sure we could have that ratio be a little bit higher because I could structure it better and have more of a larger driving range, things to hit at and all that kind of stuff. But.
So 45 minutes from 0 to 6, so you're doing 45 minutes still for.
So as soon as we get to the fundamentals is when we'll go 60. We'll go 60 minutes right there. This is also when we'll allow them to come to our camps too. We start at 6 years old as well, half-day camps for that age group too. Again, the encouragement is more about, and even with this young of an age, the parents are like, where's the progress? Where's the progress? I'm like, we're fostering a love of the game. Your kid wants to be here every single day, and that's all we could ask for the next 3 years, kind of thing, right? At the same time, they are fast learners. I mean, if you get a kid who's coming a couple times a week to a group class, he will become a better golfer. I promise you that. But it's more about fostering that love and growth of the game at this stage. Learn to play. So that's 8 to 11 girls, 9 to 12 boys. So further development of fundamental movement skills. We still haven't lost fundamentals. And teaching general fundamental golf skills. Otherwise, significant window is lost, opportunity lost, compromising the ability of the young golfers to reach their full potential. Development strength using exercises that incorporate the child's own body weight, introduce hopping and bounding exercises or routines to aid in strength and power. Further develop endurance through continuous activities and games. So it's at this age is where we start to introduce the concept of competition. And when you do the certification, they're going to have a ratio that you follow. How much fun to competition you should be at. This is where you get to 60% fun, 40% competition. And so these games this is when they love doing team scrambles. This is when they love getting on the golf course. This is when they really enjoy those competitive atmosphere games. Before this age, right, they normally struggle with that concept. Competition is not very fun. Struggling is not very fun. That is when they decide, hey, golf is too hard. I don't want to come to golf anymore. It's not fun anymore. So it's at this age is when we really start to introduce the that competitive atmosphere. We use a coin-based system. It's really simple, but each kid has an opportunity to get 3 coins each class based upon how they behaved, activities and drills that we're doing. They can be rewarded with that, which they then can use at our pro shop to purchase fun things, like whether it's tees or balls or silly putty or anything like that. But it's a really easy way, and those coins are different for each age group. The younger kids, just participating, you're going to get coins, right? Showing up and trying your hardest, you're going to get coins. But for this age is when we can introduce the concept of point system and earning the points and all that kind of stuff. And then the other one here is teaching general fundamental skills. So they're talking about this window of opportunity. I personally know very high level golfers, 15, 16, 17 years old, who specialized at this age, and they are great players. Oh my God. I mean, just phenomenal strikers of the golf ball with unlimited potential, or the concept, or I think they have unlimited potential. But with one of my clients, they invited me out to go play pickleball with them. And this golfer, he was just an absolute athlete on the golf course, for the life of him, couldn't play pickle. I mean, it was like watching a person like on ice kind of thing. And it was because they lost that window of opportunity. They specialized at golf at such a young age that they didn't get any of the other benefits of any other sports, whether it be soccer or basketball or even football, kind of things like that, flag football, right? We encourage, still at this age, multi-sport athletes. With our programs, we are very generous to kids who are multi-sport athletes. You're never going to lose your money because you signed up for another sport. We're always going to issue you credits. We are huge believers in that. Go out there, try it, do it, please, please, kind of thing, because we understand that it's an investment, because the kids who do the multi-sports, I believe enough in our program that golf is going to be the one they have to choose, or the one they choose when they have to choose it, right? But if they don't get that opportunity, they'll never know the other aspects of it. So now we got Play to Improve. Anyone participate in PGA Junior League or heard about PGA Junior League? Yeah, it's a great program. It was our first year running it. Man, it's so fun. Oh, cow. So this is us actually at Quail Village Golf Club. So that's just right over there. And they were nice enough to let us utilize their facilities late Saturday afternoon when no one's around. You get 36 kids who come out there. And you can see me running around, and we'll do it with these kids who are in this like 11. And we'll have a couple of kids younger than that too. The normal PGA Junior League format is a scramble match play. So team of three match play event each hole. But for our younger kids, we want them to learn and participate in the sport. So we just do a 6-person scramble. Let's get out there. You, me, the coach versus the golf course kind of thing, right? So again, introducing golf in a really fun way. Parents absolutely love it. I mean, we just get the stampede, mom, dad, grandpa, everyone. Like one mom was dragging a kid in like a wheelbarrow the whole time too, right? It's awesome. It was so much fun. So this is kind of that age where you start to introduce the tournament side of golf. This is that middle school age. Lots of schools in this area have middle school teams. We are slow in this area compared to a lot of other areas in Florida. Very slow. And so this is something I'm heavily invested in, is getting those programs up and running, talking to the right people, teaming up with other schools and stuff like that, because this is where we need to get them hooked on the idea that might be their sport. We're still not asking them to specialize, but we're really encouraging this concept that, hey, if you want to follow golf, there's a place to follow, right? And the team atmosphere is really fun too. This is also when we start talking about some really fun routines that we can be doing from a flexibility standpoint, pre-warm-up, that kind of stuff. So, and then lastly, we have our play to compete and our play to win. So this is that final stage where those kids are entering high school and they get to specialize, right? This is where I really encourage specialization from both the standpoint of potential for colleges, but also time management. Kids nowadays are doing, I mean, yes, they got spending too much time on their phones, but they have a lot of other things going on. Some of the schools in this area have kids who are in many extracurricular activities. They have them actually starting their own businesses. Colleges nowadays are extremely difficult to get into. So the time that these students have is very valuable. And so it's at this age that they have to choose a sport. And so if they are going to choose golf, here's some important things we're thinking about: providing year-round high intensity and individual training, teach golfers who are now proficient at performing the basic sport-specific skills, place special emphasis on optimization and individually tailored fitness programs. So it's not until this age where we really get into the individual aspects. However, we had huge success with this age range doing a hybrid program of every other week group golf instruction and a package of private lessons. They loved that, right? And it allowed them the flexibility to do all their extracurricular activities. When they saw us, we were able to play fun games and all that kind of stuff. And then they had their package of private lessons, which they did on their own. It was not only great from a time management standpoint for me, but also a time management standpoint for the student. And I got them committed for a long term. We had them sign up for 32 weeks total, right? So here's your schedule, here's the tournaments, here's the lessons. And I mean, honestly, that's what baseball's doing. That's what soccer's doing. That's what all these other sports are doing. And we as golf instructors have to create that for them because that's what they're going to expect if they're coming from any other sport. But this is another growing area. But again, at this point, lots of kids quit golf, quit sports, and all that kind of stuff. But if we follow this development model, less and less people will quit sports in general at this age. Yes.
So it was funny because I was thinking about this. So I was a basketball and a softball player, right? I have two nieces, one that just went to play for Ole Miss. She started being recruited when she was 14. And then I've got one that's 13 right now who can throw. She's a pitcher. She can throw as hard as a college player.
Yeah.
And she's being recruited at 13. She was really starting to be looked at 12.
Yep.
So I was kind of looking at this thinking we're behind. However, this is a sport you can play for a lifetime.
Yep.
Or you can't play the others.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, so, and again, colleges, recruitment processes, if you have the time, pull out the manual or sit down with a true college coach to learn the rules. There's a lot more rules than you think. When a kid says, oh, I just committed to Notre Dame and I'm 12 years old. No, you didn't. Like you didn't even get an invitation. You didn't even get a letter from the coach because that coach would be fired like this, right? There are very specific parameters of when you can reach out, how you can reach out, and how old they're going to be.
they can reach out to the coaches.
They can reach out to the coaches, right? But even that is tricky sometimes too. Even that's tricky sometimes too, because like, for example, if you have a kid who's already enrolled in a program, like in college, and you're still working with that coach can't reach out for you to other coaches if you're in the programs. Tons of rules about it. But at the end of the day, the more coaches that I talk to, they're looking for what colleges are looking for, which is the right fit for the college, and make sure that they're a good student, make sure that they actually can get accepted into the school. So many of these kids who specialize at an early age, I have to have a very serious conversation about grades and, hey, you've been homeschooled for the last 3 years. That's not going to look very good on a resume. And what extracurricular activities are you doing? Hey, pull up your social media page right now. Sure, you want to be posting all this stuff on your social media page? Just because you have talent does not mean you're going to make it all the way through. And there's lots of other things, but what I would highly encourage and what I've done with FGCU is just get involved with those coaches and talk about what do they want. I have again another client who's kind of entering this phase, and the biggest thing they said, Thor, we have a list of colleges that we have to get into, and it's just every Division I college you've ever thought of, right? I'm like, great. How many of these have you been to? Been to any of them? You just know these are the ones we want to go to. Like, step foot on campus, experience what it's like. Go check out what the local life is like, because these might be your goals, but you might get there and it might be the totally wrong fit. And that's something you actually can be doing at 13 and 14 years old, which is really beneficial, is touring colleges, checking them out. I mean, you're traveling all over the place anyways, you might as well just go step foot on campus. So these conversations I have with parents are normally tough conversations to have, but at the end of it are really beneficial to my professionalism and my expertise in the area. And so, again, just kind of thinking about it differently. Your kid doesn't have to specialize. Your kid doesn't have to only focus on golf from a young age. That being a hybrid, being an athlete is really, really important, because at the end of the day, college is over in 4 years and they got a whole life to live afterwards, right? You want to make sure that you're developing strong, morally sound kids more than you're producing these high-level athletes. And at the same time, you can still produce some pretty great golfers out there. One of the best experiences I ever had was that this kid's been in our program for 5 years now, and I just got to sign his application papers for the PGM program at Florida Gulf Coast University. And so I was like, that was neat. I remember I walked into my head professional in my area and I had him sign my papers. And so I got to see that kid go from 13 years old to now applying to be a PGA professional. And that has been far more rewarding than any of those other high-level players who's won awards and stuff. So again, additional services you can offer. Tournament scheduling. Tournaments are confusing, right? There's a million different ones, US Kids, Under Armour Tour, the First Tee program, right? You as a head professional, it's a lot easier for you to understand the schedule than to just say, go figure it out, mom and dad. If you produce a schedule for them, not only is that going to benefit them, but it's going to make you look really good, and you can charge for that service. Practice plans, habit building, right? We know how to practice. We know how a driving range should be used. These kids do not. Writing practice plans and skills testing has been huge for our program, right? Giving them things that they can actually do, homework type situations have been awesome. Again, additional things you can charge for. Lessons with the parents. Every private lesson, I want the parent to come. I know there's a lot of people who are like, oh, get the parent out of here kind of thing, right? And there is a time and place when the parent does need to step back, but I want the parent involved because at the end of the day, they are making all the decisions. Okay, so if I can get that parent on board with this program, it's a lot easier to implicate or initiate the program for that student, right? So, and especially if you're doing a hybrid model, no group, parents are not allowed to come to group lessons, but you should sign up for a private lesson and then you can come watch and see all the progress they've done. Again, we've made many more private lessons have been sold because we enforce no parents during groups and encourage parents during privates. Traveling to events with students, it's a really cool experience. I can't tell you how much a student appreciates that kind of stuff. It's great networking for you. It's great to get out there, see other courses, all that kind of stuff. So if you get the opportunity, but these are all services that you can charge for and will really differentiate yourself when applying the athletic development model. Now we're going to get into the psychological aspect here because kids are tough to deal with sometimes, okay? One of the daily challenges of life is how do I get people, including myself, to do what I want? What we're going to talk about today is this thing called the 4 Tendencies quiz. The 4 Tendencies framework makes this task much easier by revealing whether a person is an upholder, a questioner, a obliger, or a rebel. This quiz is 8 questions long, and I have every single one of my students take it, okay? Because at the end of the day, I want them to become better golfers. I want them to practice more golf. And the way that they interpret those expectations is different person to person. And when I understand how they interpret the expectations I'm putting on them, I can better frame it to make them be more successful, all right? So we're gonna start off with each one of these here. And I think the best way to talk about it is for a goal or a habit that we're trying to achieve with a student. So I'm trying to achieve with a student to get them to practice more. That's what I want them to do, go out and practice more. Through this quiz, you might find that they're an upholder. An upholder meets outer expectations and inner expectations. You tell the student, hey, I want you to go practice. They'll say, yes, sir, I'll go practice. Not only do they want to practice, but not only do you want them to practice and they understand that and they'll follow it, but they also want to practice. These people are really good at building habits because they're rule followers. They're people who, again, I think are some of the best students, and we see a lot of great at a young age from these types of people. However, they don't like breaking habits. So if you tell a golfer to, hey, I need you to come more inside, and this is the drill I want you to do, they'll do that drill inside. They'll do that drill all day, every day till they see you 3 weeks later. Now they're way too far inside. And so now you got to give them a different drill. They're like, well, hold on, you told me to do this rule, and I'm going to break that rule? What do you mean to break that rule, right? So the upholder does a great job creating habits, but struggles to break ones that they have already installed. An obliger. This is a person who meets outer expectations, but resists inner expectations. If you tell that student to do something, I want you to practice, they'll do it because you're expecting them to. However, they'll never want to do it, right? If they have, let's say it's a Tuesday afternoon, they got a free afternoon, I'm gonna go practice, but all of a sudden their best friend says, hey, you should come to the bowling alley. You should be like, well, I don't wanna let them down, right? But I don't wanna let my coach down. And won't ask themselves, what do they wanna do, kind of thing, right? And so if you can reframe how you ask them to practice, saying, hey, I want you to go practice, but I want you to tell me when you're practicing, right? Put the ownership into them. So you change it slightly to help the obliger internalize it a little bit more, because that's what they struggle doing. They don't struggle following the rules, they struggle with them wanting to do it themselves. And that's key to habit building, is you initiating those things. The questioner resists outer expectation but meets inner expectation. So a person who, a questioner would be someone who said, you're talking about a swing change or something you want them to do. And they're like, well, I do it better this way. You probably get that student a lot, right? It's like, oh, we'll try this. No, I do it better this way. I do it better this way, right? Then you're like, well, we'll come here to my screen real quick and look at how Tiger does this, and look how David Ball does this, and look at all this. And all of a sudden they're like, you're right. Yeah, those guys actually do that. And then they do it. It wasn't because you told them. It's because they got all their questions answered around it, so that they would then make those changes, right? And then lastly, we have our rebel. Rebel's tough. And we may think that people are solely rebel, but they do have other tendencies in there. But the rebel is the one who resists outer expectation and resists inner expectations. These are people who can do whatever they want. They are normally great players of the game, but because they have these resistance to expectations, we struggle to coach them a lot. All right. And so this is one that I think is really difficult to deal with and is important to identify, because you don't want that person to give up the game of golf. You don't want to give up on that person. But if you can identify them as a rebel, where the test will tell you, hey, they're primarily a rebel, but they lean obliger or they lean upholder, you'll have a better idea of how to reframe it to work with that student. So again, I highly recommend reading the book to learn more about it, but the quiz itself, it's 8 questions long, 4 tendencies quiz. You can have each one of your students take it. And it's really, really beneficial to understand how they think and how they develop habits. Getting to our last section here, which is kind of which is the physical aspect of junior golf that I think is a huge issue, is the loss of midline stabilization. So when I'm talking about midline stabilization, I'm talking about basically posture, or if we're looking at the connection from pelvis to shoulder here. So you can see each one of these has a significant difference in whether it be they're leaning back, or they're arching forward, or the shoulders are rolled back, or the neck is pushed forward. And we see these tendencies a lot in kids. This is the one we probably see the most common because of overuse of cell phones, computers, and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, our body is not done growing for a very long time. I mean, I think our brain stops growing at a point of 25 years. It slows down, but still, there's lots of room to fix this kind of stuff. So understanding when an issue like this comes up and how to fix it is really, really important. Many of these issues is just a simple awareness of your body, where you can give cues to help students flatten out their back, tuck their head back, whatever it may be. However, us as golf instructors can use this as an opportunity to look at the golf swing as an exercise to help students better train posture. All right, so let's get into how golfers are supposed to hinge, pivot, and rotate with proper midline stabilization. Something that you'll see in many golfers. I just have Tiger up here, but this midline stabilization is really the key factor creating biomechanic efficiency in the golf swing, as well as safety throughout the swing as well. So you can see through all these positions of his hinge, his pivot, and as well as his rotation, that midline doesn't really lose the stability that we may see with a lot of our younger amateur golfers. Kids want to move the right way, but it's the things that we put in front of them that makes them move the wrong way. And so I have this very simple assessment that I have all of my kids do to basically check their progress through midline stabilization and their golf swing. So this is Carmine. Carmine is 10 years old, and he just got a new set of clubs. So this is something that I check with all kids who have a new set of clubs. One of the biggest dangers out there is putting a kid with too heavy of a golf club. That'd be like having someone do exercises with too heavy of a kettlebell. So this simple test, this first one right here, is one that I do with almost any kid who just got a new set of clubs or just stepped on my lesson tee, is a simple hold the club out in front of you and stand still. We can see that Carmine can actually maintain good posture throughout the entire holding of the club here. But what you will find is many kids at this point will do a big lean back like this. All right. And it's at this point is when I start to get concerned on either A, that club is too heavy, or B, they don't have control of their midline at a very, very basic level. So I then take that student and I'll have them walk their hands on the club or choke up on the club to change the weight distribution to get them to a point where they can actually maintain good posture. So that's normally the first assessment I do with the student. The second assessment, again, so this is us maintaining midline at a basic level. Now I see if they can maintain midline at a hinge. I don't do it when they're just setting up to the golf club because that's a passive position. I want active, right? So from this position, he actually has to actively hold this position and turn on and fire all these muscles to make sure that he's hinged in this right position. So we can say, again, good midline stabilization through the hinge movement of the golf swing. And then we get into the pivot position, right? So for those of you who do a lot of technical work, this is what would be close to P2 or position 2 when club is parallel to the ground. And Carmine, this is where he actually failed the test. This was the point when I started to see reverse spine angle and for him to lean really far this direction and get excessive reaching out of the club like this. So this is actually after a few minutes of cueing and coaching and telling him to move his body in the right position to get him to pivot with proper midline stabilization. So with this one, you might see, this is where you'll see a lot of those advanced students start to fail. And then lastly, rotation. So it's the final position where I'd have him take a swing and hold his finish. I always have this saying is you're allowed to swing as hard as you want as long as you don't fall over. So if a kid can hit a golf ball and hold this position, I'll let him swing as hard as he wants. Kind of thing. But things you might see that would make you fail this position is if the club is draped over your back, you're not in an active position. From face on view, you might see extreme curvature of the spine. But this simple assessment and just breaking down each position for the golfer really helps them identify what it feels to keep proper posture while in that hinge, that pivot, and that rotation position. So those are really what we wanted to talk about for the 4 pillars and what I think are the most applicable information for the junior golfer population. It's at this point that if there was anything that came up, we'd love to hear some questions or some comments about it. Whether it's regarding the nutritional standpoint, the ADM model, or even how I run my junior golf. Yeah.
Finding that test, I always, when I used to do some kids, they would have those US kids clubs, and they were so flimsy. Did you find that if they had those clubs, they failed the test too?
Not necessarily, because so I really like the US Kids, and I encourage a lot of people to use them because of their Ultralight series, where they utilize a different type of metal that actually makes the head lighter than your average head. The biggest issue with junior golfers and having clubs that are too heavy is not the length of the club, but the weight of the head, actually. So for the flimsiness, no, I didn't get them to see that they would fail it. What I do think is, I mean, this goes into a whole nother aspect of swing weight in clubs. Junior golfers' swing weight are just all over the place, right? From club to club. If you look at a junior golfer's driver compared to a pitching wedge, it's drastically different. Where I think a lot of junior golfers, for this position right here, I think there actually is a need for some sort of training aid with a counterweight on this end of the club to actually get them to position that hinge a little bit better, because I think the swing weights are so off with those junior golfs that are not using the Ultralight series. And once they want to step up, that there's a need for some sort of counterbalance almost on that side of things. But no, with the flimsy ones, I haven't seen them fail the test. If they are failing the test, I'd actually put them with an alignment stick, because we were talking about movements and exercises. You decrease load in order for weight to make movement easier. So then if a person is failing this, I'd actually have them turn the club around or give them an alignment stick so they can actually feel that position.
I guess that's the question. Did you ever find that sometimes you would have a kid that had so much strength that even junior clubs were not good enough for them? You had to get them into a almost like a ladies club.
For sure, yeah, there's definitely a point, and that goes back to that athletic development model certification. You'll kind of learn when that age is for kids, and when you can really, there's a window of opportunity for power and speed, and that's where you really want to get them into those higher level sets, because that's the window of opportunity for them. Yeah.
Are there any pre-range warm-ups that you do to try to strengthen their midline?
Yeah, we do a lot of really simple ones that I think, so when you go back to this, the most common one we see is this right here, which is called C posture. And just to make it super simple, these muscles are too tight, these muscles are too loose. So just in a very generic sense, we always open up with a variety of different exercises that opens up the chest and that will strengthen the back, right? So those could lead to a lot of different things. But I mean, toe touches are not going to help your kid get out of this posture right here. And that's what everyone does, is the toe touches. So lots of times I'll actually have them take the golf club behind their back, and we'll look down and back up like this, because now I'm getting them to loosen up that hamstring, but also roll their shoulders back at the same time. So we're stretching something different. So I know you would be a great resource for a lot of those different stretches, but most of them, again, just targeted specifically here. And we do a lot of different variety of them, but there's no one form of use.
Ryan, can you overhydrate?
Yes, absolutely. That's such a good question. When Thor and I were talking earlier about having to play catch up, so a good example would be an athlete that they're not starting early with their hydration, and they show up to the golf course or a tournament, and then they're trying to play catch up and they're drinking a lot of water. That can actually dilute your electrolytes and cause issues. I've seen a couple of athletes that's actually led to cramping, muscle cramping, because they've diluted their electrolytes. So that's why Thor and I both agree with this. Hydration starts early. If they can set themselves up for success by drinking maybe 12 to 16 ounces of water as soon as they get up in the morning, and then they have their breakfast, and then they can continue to hydrate. There's a lot less catch up. Arriving well hydrated is the best for any athlete. To have to put that stress on them to, okay, now I have to drink a bunch of fluid. And like Dora was saying, it typically just doesn't work out well for them. Yeah, good question.
All right, a question. What was your take back from the drive, chip, and putt from the Masters? I mean, some of these kids are hitting the ball pretty far.
Yeah.
Really. Do you like take your practice sessions, and how much time you spend on the short game versus full swing versus?
For sure. My rule of thumb is I tell the parent, you should be practicing with your kid, and you should live on the chipping green and the putting green. Let me worry about their full swing. You don't step in there to really try and teach the mechanics and overemphasize that kind of stuff. You should be playing games and activities with them around chipping and putting and installing this really field-based aspect with them. Because the difference between me and a 6-year-old being able to make a 10-foot putt, physically, there's no difference. So it's actually a great point for them to learn like competition and pressure with a parent. So again, yeah, the kids are hitting it extremely far. I think we have only seen the beginning of what golfers are going to be able to do. And I think that's why a lot of the USGA is trying to install rollbacks on the golf ball and stuff, because there's going to be some long hitters who have not even entered the field yet, because of things like that athletic development model and introducing golfers, just getting more golfers to play, more athletes playing golf for sure.
DeChambeau effect.
The DeChambeau effect? Possibly. Yeah, possibly. We have our own. I mean, say what you want about him, but that man has definitely reshaped his body. He knows the physics in and out. But we'll get into. I mean, I think that's actually a perfect segue is the
into the
right, because there he is right there. So I know, thank you for that. I know that timed it perfect. So now we get to really talk about, we can save some time at the end to talk about junior golfers and stuff like that more. I mean, again, I can talk about it for a whole day, but this is really a fun one to talk about, which is the modern golfer and modern performance that we're going to see in the next 5 to 10 years of PGA professionals and what the new generation of golfers are going to expect us as golf instructors to be familiar with, right? So I'll pass this over to you.
Thank you, sir. All right, so let's jump right back into nutrition. Starting with performance concerns, this helps us so much to understand what this group of athletes typically is up against, and then we can get into what a fueling timeline looks like and what we can do about some of these issues. I had to throw dehydration and maintaining energy levels on the course. It might surprise some people, but I mean, the modern golfer, even though they're established golfers, they usually have their own strategies that have been working well for them. That does not mean that they're immune to inconsistencies on the golf course, right? Whether they're playing poorly or maybe it's just a super hot day and they're not staying on top of their hydration. These are still issues that I see. And when I was working at IMG, these were the most common issues that I saw a lot with the tour players. They would come in frustrated about, maybe I'm not hydrating right. So the kind of questions you want to be asking, especially with dehydration, is where are they going wrong? Is it that they're not arriving well hydrated? Maybe their hydration strategy on the course is off. Maybe we need to add some additional electrolytes if they're not using electrolytes. I threw up this this Assess Your Hydration poster. This is something I collaborated with Corey Stringer Institute. It is a urine color chart. I'm sure everyone is familiar with those. I put this up here because it might help some golfers that are still struggling with what it feels like to be well hydrated. And the urine color chart isn't completely perfect because there are some things that we can put in our diets, or even a multivitamin, for example, that change the color of our urine. How many have taken a multivitamin and you use the restroom and your urine's bright yellow? That's because of riboflavin, which is B2. So that can throw off using a urine color chart. But what we did here is we actually put the urine color chart with a corresponding USG. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with that. That is urine-specific gravity. That is actually the gold standard on how to measure hydration in athletes. It never lies. So we actually, with Tampa Bay, we actually paired that. This is a pen refractometer. And all it is just a device, really small. It's got a metal tip with glass on the end, and you just dip it in urine. It gives you a number. So you know if you're below 11, you know you're well hydrated. If you're above 24, you know you have some work to do. We started using this for athletes that were really struggling with their hydration. And we found that it worked with so many of our athletes because they were able to realize what being well hydrated felt like based on science, so based on the number. And some of the really sciencey nerds, I think about like DeChambeau, some of the sciencey nerds love this kind of stuff because they want data. They don't want to just use a urine color chart because it's not fail-proof. So using something like this and not necessarily up, in the clubhouse might be beneficial to some of these athletes, and just keeping one on hand if they want to come in every day and they want to check their hydration. And sooner or later, they make that connection to what the reading is and how they feel. And that's such a beautiful aha moment. So that's why I brought up USG and potentially doing something like this. Maintaining energy levels on the course, again, this athlete is gonna present with fatigue, so not gonna see your best performance. So checking in again, what's going wrong? Where are we going wrong with our fueling strategies? Is it our pre-competition meal? Maybe there's not enough protein. Are we under fueling with carbohydrate? Is it our snacking? Are we missing snacks? Or maybe our snacks don't have enough carbohydrate. Maybe it's what we're doing the day before. Maybe, we missed a meal or two and our glycogen stores were low. And so that affected performance the following day. So these are all the things my nerdy brain does when I'm talking to athletes, just trying to figure out where they're going wrong. That way we can make it better. We can improve and help this athlete so they can perform more successfully. Okay, so now we're getting into a couple of other things. So maintaining muscle mass and strength. The reason I have this up here is because sadly, once we start hitting 30 to 40 years old, our muscle starts becoming anabolically resistant to protein ingestion. And what that means is we need more and more protein in order to stimulate muscle growth in the body. So over time, we can see a decrease in muscle mass. And when we see a decrease in muscle mass, we see a decrease in muscle strength. So what can we do about this? Because we know it's happening. And it gets worse after 40, trust me. So we'll talk about that with the retired golfer. But what can we do about this as coaches? Really making sure that they are optimizing the recovery window. Okay, and that's about that hour after any kind of training. And this is for any athlete. We really want to optimize that recovery window because that is when we are rebuilding and repairing muscles and doing that adaptation so we keep getting stronger and stronger. Making sure we're optimizing protein at all the meal times. That's going to be really important as well to make sure we are hitting our protein goals so we can maintain that muscle mass and not lose muscle mass and strength. There's no golfer wants that. I had to put alcohol consumption up here. We also want to make sure we're minimizing alcohol consumption during periods of anabolism. I get this question all the time. When can I drink alcohol? How does that affect me? How does it affect my recovery? Well, if you're having just maybe a beer, that's probably not going to do too much damage. But alcohol has a huge impact on suppressing muscle protein synthesis and testosterone. We know this. This is backed by science. So how do we cope with this with a lot of athletes that love to have a few beers or something like that? What would we say if we're noticing that we have an athlete who maybe isn't recovering optimally, and we find that okay, they're having a few too many beers, maybe after a tournament or something like that? What can we do? Well, I always say be strategic about your alcohol consumption. Be strategic, right? And what do I mean by that? Well, drink alcohol when it doesn't matter, when you don't have to recover. Okay, so maybe on like an off day, or maybe on an afternoon where you played some golf, but you don't have a tournament the next day. So that recovery isn't as important. So be strategic. All right, sports injuries. Typically with a modern golfer, at some point during their career, they're going to sustain some kind of injury. Whether there a lot of times they're soft tissue injury. It could be back, sprain, strain, maybe the wrist. But there are some things that we can do preventatively from a nutrition standpoint that might help reduce the risk of sports injuries. One is just following nutrient timing recommendations. And what I mean by that is making sure you're hitting that recovery window. You're getting that protein and carbohydrate within that hour of training. I was just talking about that. So optimizing recovery, that's huge in athletes. Another is going to be what I was talking about before, making sure you have fueling and hydration strategies on the course that are working well for you. If they're not working well for you, tweak it. Because the last thing we want to see is a decrease in carbohydrate underfueling. That can also lead to a fatigue injury or even an injury that's far more severe. So making sure we have our fueling down, that is so incredibly important. Getting adequate rest, sleep, right? This is a no-brainer. I feel like we've been talking about sleep for 10 years plus. We know how important this is. During my time with Tampa Bay, I have a background in sleep, and I was doing some collaboration work with our sports science team and Sherry Ma out of Stanford Sleep Medicine. She's amazing. She's a sleep physician. And so we did some work together with some of our athletes. What we saw was actually the same that they've presented in the literature is athletes that are sleeping less than 7 hours, we actually see an increase in injuries. So what can we do if you see an athlete that's has an injury, they're not healing, or maybe they just came down with an injury, you can kind of ask them a few questions about their sleep. What's their sleep look like? Are they getting 6 hours? Maybe they're up until 3 in the morning on social media. I don't know. Make sure they're getting adequate sleep. And we actually see performance. I'm just going to throw this out here. We see performance increases with 9+ hours of sleep. Okay, that's also in the research. All right, so let's talk about joint pain and inflammation. This is so common, right? Every modern golfer is going to have inflammation. That's just anyone training is going to have inflammation, because anytime we're doing damage to our muscles, we're creating an acute inflammation. Okay, and that's okay, that's normal. The body takes care of that through healing and recovery. What we don't want to see is a chronic inflammation. And this can present a joint pain. There's lots of ways this, can actually present with the athlete, but joint pain is very, very common. What can we do about it? One of the things that I literally started diving into an athlete, what's their diet look like? Number one, what's their diet look like? Tell me about your fueling habits. That's one of my favorite questions. And if they're eating a lot of what I call pro-inflammatory foods, and what I mean by that, it would be a high saturated fat diet, so lots of animal fats, meat on the bone, fatty cuts of meat. It could also be lots of packaged foods, fast foods, a high sugar diet, maybe even a lot of alcohol. That could be part of the issue. You're not going to be recovering well if you're not putting the kind of fuel in your body that's going to support recovery. Your body is going to continue to be inflamed. So one of the things I really look at here, diet. Hydration is important as well, but diet. And then boosting the level of fresh fruits and vegetables. Those are your anti-inflammatories. So I used to tell our athletes all the time. And making a shift toward the plant-based diet, that decreases inflammation so fast. A lot of people don't want to do that. But even if you can make small changes with your athletes, adding more fresh fruits and vegetables, that will be huge here. Poor sleep. I see this so often. I don't know what's going on. A lot of people are struggling with sleep. And there could be a couple of issues from a nutrition standpoint. Athletes, if they're using beverages, too close to sleep. I mean, caffeine, that's a no-brainer. We all know, caffeine is probably not an ideal beverage before bed. That doesn't mean that it's a poor option throughout the day, but not before bed, because it's going to keep someone up. Even alcohol before bed. If you need to make sure you're getting deep restorative sleep, probably want to skip the alcohol. Some people can tolerate one beverage, but usually more than that. It is not going to allow you to get into deep sleep, and that's where growth hormone is released. So that's when the body does so much of its cleanup and repair work. So we don't want to mess with that. And then avoiding foods that negatively impact sleep. That would be a really fatty meal or a spicy meal right before bed, because if laying down, that can cause heartburn, and that's not comfortable either. So that can cause some issues as well. All right, let's get into some fun stuff. Boosting dietary intake of magnesium, tart cherry, and L-theanine. All of these help with sleep. So what I usually ask athletes, is it falling asleep you're struggling with? Is it staying asleep? What's the issue there? Is it one of these things? Because those are easy for me. If it's alcohol, caffeine, meals, things like that. Magnesium is a mineral. I always call it like your chill mineral. It makes you so calm. It also acts as a muscle relaxant, and it boosts the neurotransmitter GABA. I know I'm getting a little sciencey on you, but it boosts the neurotransmitter GABA in the brain, and that's a calming neurotransmitter. It kind of shuts down the brain and prepares it for sleep. So that's why magnesium's helpful. A lot of athletes don't eat enough because it's high in your green leafy vegetables. Not a lot of people like to eat those. We also sweat it out. It's an electrolyte, okay? And the higher stress we're under, the more magnesium we need because we burn through it, okay? Tart Cherry, I actually have samples here. I have a sample of magnesium as well. Tart Cherry also is great for sleep. 100% Tart Cherry, I'm going to be specific. No added sugar. And that's because it's a natural source of melatonin. So drinking something like that before bed helps the body to be in a deep restorative sleep. We've had a lot of our athletes tell us they wake up, they sleep like a baby. So these are just options. L-theanine, L-theanine is a calming amino acid. Also, kind of makes the mind nice and relaxed before bed. Best source is Japanese matcha green tea. That has some caffeine, so probably not your best option before bed. But there are some supplements that have L-theanine, and I have one here today, actually, if you want a sample. So those are the most important things. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. No, looks good. Oh, yes.
What do you think about the CBD oils, the creams, the tinctures, things like that?
I have not personally used them. And coming out of MLB, they were not allowed. We couldn't use anything like that. But in the golfing community, I have talked with a few coaches and a few athletes, and they love them. They absolutely love them. CBD is nice because it does help induce a feeling of relaxation, and that can be very beneficial for someone with a lot of anxiety or just struggling to fall asleep. So that's my limited experience.
And what are your thoughts as far as ice and heat? You know, I've been told to ice at night and then heat before you play.
Thor is going to get to that.
Okay.
He's doing all that part. I'm just doing the nutrition part, but we're like tag teaming everything together. One last thing. I knew I was missing something on poor sleep. One of the questions too, if you have an athlete that tells you that they keep waking up in the middle of the night and they're not sure why, ask them about when they last ate. Because a lot of times from my experience, it could be hypoglycemia. And what that means is just low blood sugar. So these athletes are burning through so many calories that if they've had a really active day and maybe they went to bed at 8, the last meal they had was at like 6 p.m. and they go to bed at like 11, they'll need another meal or snack in before most likely they'll wake up from hypoglycemia. So that's just something to think about.
So with the supplements,
yes,
like magnesium, I've tried that because I had some cramping issues and that. So there's all kinds of different types of magnesium that I found.
Excellent question. Yes. I'm a huge magnesium guru, so I get really excited to talk about magnesium. So yes, it really depends on what the issue is. If it is a muscle related issue, like nighttime cramping, so a lot of people don't know this, but the number one deficiency, if you're experiencing nighttime cramping, magnesium, best is going to be magnesium glycinate. And I actually have magnesium glycinate here today. It's probably the best, most bioavailable kind of magnesium. There's other sources that are great too. Magnesium is great for the heart, magnesium malate, the excellent there, and magnesium for cognition, magnesium L3 and 8. Literally, there's lists and lists of magnesium. But yeah, that's
And is there like a dosage that you have to be careful of? Or can you overdo that? You know, I mean.
You can, and I'm happy to chat with you actually after, and we can talk about dosing, what you've been doing, and what I recommend. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's talk about what daily performance fueling looks like for the modern golfer. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. It's obviously going to be a little bit different than the junior golfer. We're still focusing on whole foods because I am a sports dietitian, and I always prefer everyone getting their nutrition from whole foods. But really the focus now is to maintain bone, muscle and bone density. Some athletes are going to be building muscle at this point, which they can completely do. They're going to have to really pay attention to their protein intake, evenly distributed throughout the day. But that is they can definitely make that happen. There's a couple of things, nutrients that we start paying attention to as athletes are aging. That is vitamin D. I'm sure all of you are familiar with vitamin D and how important that is. Vitamin D is important for so many things. Muscle function, muscle recovery. It is incredibly important for regulating the immune system and inflammation. That's a lot of stuff I just threw at you. But vitamin D is really huge for that. So we are going to want to be checking those annually to make sure they're in the sweet spot of I always say 50 to 100, but the sweet spot's like 50 to 70. And then ensure sufficient calcium intake. So, and this is again, juniors are growing and developing. Here we're more maintaining and potentially building muscle. Okay. Consistency with performance nutrition habits. Talked about this a lot. I don't want to, keep at it with you. I know all of you have heard this. And those are just making sure you're hitting your protein goals throughout the day. You're eating a wide variety of foods. Athletes that are avoiding a specific food group or are vegan or vegetarian really might need a sports RD referral just to make sure that they're getting all their needs. Again, I hate to see an athlete go too long and then develop deficiencies that lead to an injury. So I always say start young. You want to make sure that these athletes have great habits now that carry on throughout their career. Also, omega-3 fatty acids. This is a great supplement, or potentially getting it from the diet, because we already know one of the performance concerns was inflammation, right? So this is when we want to start incorporating an anti-inflammatory omega-3 fat. That's going to be also beneficial for muscle health. All right, macronutrient intake. Protein needs way higher. We did 20 to 25 for the junior golfers. Now we're at 30 to 40. Okay, and again, that's because once we hit 30, 40 years old, we do start struggling with keeping on that muscle mass. It's just slowly is not responding to protein ingestion like younger muscle, okay? Again, and if this is an athlete experiencing a lot of inflammation, we're really gonna wanna focus those proteins being very lean, maybe incorporating fish. We wanna decrease inflammation. Carbohydrate, again, I said it's gonna be the same across the board. And we're dosing that based on kilograms body weight. This is where, though, I would start kind of tweaking it a little bit based on that athlete's goals. If you have an athlete that is just kind of gaining a little bit of weight, wants to drop 5 pounds, something like that, we can decrease the carbohydrate a little bit, so go on the lower end. And then athletes wanting to put on more muscle mass or wanting to just put on a little bit of weight, we're going to go a little higher for that carbohydrate. It's more like 5 grams per kilogram. So that's really what it looks like. The fats, we want to focus on plant fats, especially with athletes. As we see more and more inflammation, we want more and more plant-based foods and more plant-based fats. That's going to be great for reducing inflammation in the body, especially if there's joint pain. All right, again, we're going to be drinking half the body weight in ounces to maintain adequate hydration. And this is for your basic physiological needs. As you're sitting there listening to our presentation, half your body weight in ounces would be sufficient, and then additional for sport. Okay, so tournament day. These guys usually have their pre-competition meal down. They know exactly what works for them. Usually it's going to be high protein. Because again, we want to make sure we're stimulating muscle protein growth as often as possible, taking advantage of that timeline. We can only stimulate muscle growth about every 3 to 4 hours. So that's why I usually recommend making sure that the protein is evenly distributed throughout the day, so you're maximizing muscle growth. And then arriving hydrated. This is so important, right? Thor and I were talking about it a little bit. No golfer wants to have to play catch up, because then we could risk being overhydrated. We don't want that either. So make sure we arrive well hydrated, and make sure that pre-competition meal has the 2 most important macronutrients: protein, lean protein really, to provide satiety to keep that golfer full on the course so they can focus on performance, and then carbohydrate. And that's going to be your brain and muscle fuel, particularly whole grain carbohydrate, or like a starchy carbohydrate, like a sweet potato, something like that, would be your best option for fuel. Okay, so snacking every 3 to 4 holes. These athletes can store plenty of glycogen. So they don't rely as much on a pre-competition meal or their snacks. Still important, but they're snacks off. 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour is really just the basic recommendation for golf performance. And then it's all, you know, if 30 grams is better, or 60 grams is better, maybe there's a variety of foods in there. And then higher protein. So really the big one from the junior golfer to the modern golfer is we are boosting that protein way up there. The food recommendations are coming from the American College of Sports Medicine. I use these all the time. 5 to 8 ounces every 15 minutes. So if they're struggling with this, hopefully they are not. They have it down to a science. They might need a timeline. This is where electrolytes might come in as well. So if we have a salty sweater or super hot day, I pulled these out so many times. These are really salty, by the way. I pulled these out, but every athlete that I've given a pack to has come back to thank me because they work very well. They were developed by NASA. I don't know if I told you that, by NASA scientists. Cool. So yeah, that's a great option. And again, electrolytes, sodium and potassium help you hold onto your body water. Okay, so that's so important during sport. Did I miss anything? Ah, yes.
How much do those recommendations change if we're just talking about like a club member that's playing 18 holes on golf or also like walking like a tournament or something like that?
So
Does that change a lot or not really?
not too much. No, this is what they recommend for this age group, 5 to 8 ounces. So it could be that maybe someone's more on the lower end. Maybe they only need 5 ounces every 15 minutes, whereas some athletes might need 8 ounces every 15 minutes. A lot of it's going to be dependent on body size as well and temperature. If it's extremely hot, they normally are maybe doing 6 ounces, they might need to bump it up to 7, 8 ounces. So it's one of those things I wish I could say there's a one size fits all, but everything I do as a sports RD is individualized to that athlete's needs, literally to the kilogram. So I'm trying to generalize it as best I can. But what I would recommend is when you're working with an athlete, try something maybe in the middle and then see how that works. If they need more hydration, then you can go a little more for your recommendations. And they'll get it right eventually. It's a lot of it is just trial and error, to be honest. And then using a hydration plan I found has been so helpful for so many athletes until they get it down, until they master it. All right, so this is what a modern day or a modern golfer tournament day looks like. Again, really pushing hydration. Thor and I both are. Pushing hydration as soon as you wake up. Hydration starts early. I literally have everyone recite that to me. They're like, okay, hydration starts early. I get it.
Coffee
Sometimes,
doesn't count.
what's that?
Coffee doesn't count.
Coffee doesn't count. Yeah, actually, I won't talk about coffee because I have some green tea matcha sticks that this athlete wanted to try during the tournament. Okay, what does this breakfast look like? Way high protein. This is a multi-egg scramble, a whole bunch of vegetables to add fiber, some chopped up avocado, whole bunch of sweet potatoes. So this athlete, oh, and I forgot the fruit up top, the fresh fruit. So additional fiber, and I love fruit in the morning because it's hydrating. So it's such a great option for this athlete. They are well fueled for this day. High protein provides that satiety. I love sweet potatoes in the morning because they do have a lot of fiber, they're nutrient packed, and they give you long lasting energy. And that's what every golfer wants. You don't want sugar crashes at all. So I threw a whole bunch of snacks out here. It doesn't mean that all of these, an athlete would want all of them. Maybe they just want to eat the same thing. But I just want everyone to kind of visualize what it might look like eating every, 3 to 4 holes. I threw this in here. I thought that would be fun. These are Japanese matcha sticks that have L-theanine. They also have a little bit of caffeine. Okay, I'm not too worried about a little bit of caffeine because even though caffeine is a diuretic, if you're drinking a ton of it, that's a huge problem. You're going to be losing too much fluid. But if you're doing something light, that can provide enough of a stimulant to help performance during the day. There's hardly any caffeine in these matcha sticks, maybe 40 milligrams, but it provides L-theanine. When paired with caffeine, it gives you a calm focus. Because if you remember, L-theanine is a calming amino acid, okay? So that can help with sleep if you are anxious, but when paired with caffeine, it can help with performance. Okay, so I just threw that in there. Doesn't mean you have to recommend it. I just wanted to educate everyone about it. This has actually been a really big, I've heard a lot of athletes talking about it. So I have this granola here. This is a high protein, very low sugar, high fiber granola. I've added in some beef jerky, turkey jerky, bananas, apples, high protein sandwiches. Again, this athlete's protein needs are much higher. So I boosted protein quite a bit. I didn't go too much here because they just had a meal. So I went a little bit lighter. But a nice big rice bowl with a whole bunch of veggies and chicken and, berries around lunchtime. And then, Mexican still post-tournament. And that's, the sooner the better. Again, we want to optimize recovery. So as soon as we can. And then we would want to add another meal, probably around 7 to 8. I couldn't fit it on there, but I was more focused on everyone being able to visualize what tournament day timeline looked like. Okay? Yes.
Go ahead.
Good. If I drank that much water, I would never make it to the tee. I'd be in the woods peeing like every other hole. Now, does your body adjust to that much water?
Well,
no.
That's a really good point that you bring up. The interesting thing here is that I've added a whole bunch of salty snacks and potassium. So you're getting a whole bunch of electrolytes through your food. And what that does, it helps you hold on to your body water. So let's say you have a great point. If we didn't have any of these snacks and you were just drinking water, you're right. Absolutely, you'd be running to the bathroom. But jerky, this is all sodium and potassium. So that's why it's key to get electrolytes. If you're not getting it from your snacks, then we probably need to add electrolytes to your water. Otherwise, you will be constantly urinating. And you probably won't feel well hydrated either. Because typically when we're drinking a ton of water and we're running to the restroom all the time, our urine might even be clear, but we still feel thirsty. I don't know if any of you know what I'm talking about. I've had a lot of athletes tell me that. But we just need to add electrolytes, and it's made a huge difference. But yes, I love all the good questions.
I have one real quick.
Oh, yeah.
So my wife gets me a Fitbit for Christmas, right? So I wear it. She wants me to wear it every day, but don't tell her I don't.
Okay.
So anyway, if it's accurate, I'm assuming it is, and I'm on my feet all day. So I'm burning almost 3,500 calories a day. So what, from start to finish, and is this even relevant, right? What is the calorie intake in that plan that you put together? And is it applicable to not only playing golf, but throughout a day, staying hydrated, proper snack, blah, blah, blah. So is there any relationship there, calories for that type of fuel? What? Tell me how that works.
Yes. So I didn't actually add up the calories on here because I was more focused on what a timeline looks like.
Right.
So I wanted everyone to kind of get a feel for what that looks like. When I work with an individual athlete, I literally look at, let's say Thor and I are working with an athlete together. I'll look at all the activity that Thor has this athlete doing.
Right.
And then I look at that athlete's personal goals. Does he want to put on 5 pounds of muscle, maybe 10 pounds of muscle? Maybe he wants to lose 5 pounds. So based on those personal goals, and if he has any other performance goals, we'll set up a plan for him based on his kilograms of body weight. So everything is going to be tailored to his weight down to kilograms. Yeah. The only thing where I would say hydration is pretty similar is the ACSM recommendations of the 5 to 8 ounces every 15 minutes. That's kind of across the board, backed by ACSM. And whether or not you add electrolytes, that's really individual. Typically with a sport where an athlete's constantly running, I mean, no one's going to stop and take snacks that have electrolytes, right? So I'm just thinking like NBA or, other sports, a lot of times they might be drinking Gatorade or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm wrapping things up here with the modern golfer. Yes.
Sorry, I just got a quick question. What happens if somebody's diabetic? Like, I'm diabetic. I can eat a lot of carbohydrates and everything. What do you do in that situation?
You're right. And I've worked with a few type 1 and type 2 diabetics. We individualize the nutrition program based on your needs. So they're going to have to be, higher protein, probably a little more fat, because that's going to blunt that sharp increase in blood glucose. More starchy kind of carbohydrates, which we have to sit down and figure out what kind of foods that athletes like or that athlete likes, and then come up with a plan for them. But yeah,
Like a protein shake during my round is good and everything like that.
protein typically is one of the best things, and a little bit of fat, because that doesn't spike blood glucose like carbohydrate. Now, some carbohydrates can be a little better than others when paired with protein. So it can be a little tricky and it's all individual, but that's also another very good question and point that you bring up.
For diabetics too, I mean, it's important at that point to talk with that student. You get involved with someone who's an expert like Ryan, right? But I've worked with type 2 diabetics through golf and nutrition. We've been able to reverse it. Simply golf and nutrition. Not strength training, not anything on top of that, but golf and nutrition reverse type 2 diabetes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Lifestyle modifications. That's what we call them.
So Ryan, this is really weird, but I hate water.
Yeah.
I stop. It doesn't, I don't like the taste of it. And I mean, what can you drink if you don't like water?
There are a lot of options. I had a clubhouse full of boys that hated water. It's really about finding something that you will drink. Whether it is, one thing that worked for us was having every day our head chef would put a huge glass cooler out and he'd infuse it with all these beautiful fruits. And maybe it was watermelon water or strawberry water or something like that. And that works well for some athletes. Some athletes still were like, no way, I'm not drinking that. I see what you're trying to do, Ryan. I'm still not going to drink that water. So it could be something where, I mean, even if you can do a sparkling water, like a Spindrift. We had a lot of our coaches that actually, they would just drink the lemon Spindrift or the, the grapefruit Spindrift. They absolutely love them. Okay, so if you're familiar with Spindrift, it's basically sparkling water, no artificial colorings or flavors or anything like that. It's just very little bit of fruit juice, maybe 3% fruit juice. I think that's what it is, added to it, 100%. So you get a little bit of flavor and you get some bubbliness. And people love that. Would I recommend that on the course? No. I don't recommend any kind of carbonation on the course because you actually drink less than you think because of the carbonation. And that can set you up for dehydration. So that might be another option as well. I don't know if you do something like that. But yeah, we can chat after too. Okay, let's talk about supplements because I haven't talked about supplements yet. And this is just there's so many questions about supplements. I think I'm constantly answering questions about supplements. Number one, okay, everyone see this? That is NSF first certified for sport. That is literally a stamp on a supplement that says it has been third-party tested. Now, every professional sport basically only recommends athletes take this. And there's a couple of reasons why. One, when it's being tested, what is on the label is guaranteed in the supplement. The supplement industry is not regulated. It is really scary, in all honesty. They can put anything out there. So some supplements are just not safe for athletes. So if you want to make sure what you're taking is actually in there, that's kind of the label I look for, NSF certified for sport, to know that, okay, I know what this athlete's getting. Secondly, it actually tests for, I think it's now over 400 banned substances. And this is by the World Anti-Doping Agency to make sure no athlete receives a positive doping test. So that's another great reason why we want to look for this. I usually don't mess with any supplement unless I see that. I've been trained so well. But MLB, NFL, they won't even let their athletes take anything unless it's NSF. Okay, now that we know that, let's go ahead and jump into supplements I might recommend for a modern golfer that support performance. So we have a couple. I have a couple of multivitamins here. This one on the bottom, I actually have one here. That is going to be a more nutrient-dense multivitamin. There's an AM and PM. One supports performance, the AM1. The PM1 supports recovery and sleep. It's really cool. Our athletes have always loved it. Athletic Greens is also, I have that here as well. They're just individual packets. It's kind of like a whole food supplement. And you can just put it into your water. And that's for an athlete that, you know, maybe doesn't want to do the whole multivitamin thing, but just wants an extra boost. So there's a couple of different levels there. And again, this is not meant to correct like a completely deficient diet where someone is just eating junk constantly and thinks that popping these pills is going to make everything better. Can't out supplement a poor diet. That's what I tell all the athletes. So, but this will help fill in nutritional gaps if you do have any. Protein powder. Protein powder is so common. I know a lot of athletes that use protein powder. My athletes laugh at me because I always tell them, can you just eat a meal? Because if you're going to eat a chicken breast, you're getting so much more in your chicken breast than if you were to just take whey protein. Because really all you're getting is protein. Whereas in a chicken breast, you're getting lots of vitamins and minerals, and you're getting protein. So I'm always going to push food, but there's a time and a place for protein as well. Post-workout, if you're not going to have a recovery meal, because maybe you're going to meet some friends for lunch, doing a protein shake, grabbing a banana, doing something for your muscles so you're not waiting hours before you give them any kind of nutrition. Creatine is literally the most researched supplement. It is a fantastic supplement to help. It's actually an amino acid. It's found in the brain and in the muscle. And we get it from eating meat. It's highest in beef. So levels are going to be a little lower in your vegan and vegetarian athletes. So this is where I probably would recommend it. But creatine is great for boosting explosive power. It actually helps produce energy production in the muscle. So it's a great supplement for anyone really looking for more gains in the gym. Magnesium, again, one of my favorite supplements. This is magnesium glycinate. And this is fantastic. What I was talking about earlier with magnesium, it's great for muscle function and muscle recovery. So an athlete could be using this, you know, just as a supplement. Maybe he doesn't need a multivitamin. Maybe he just needs a little extra magnesium because he won't eat his greens. That could be as well. Vitamin D. I talked a little bit about vitamin D and the importance with performance. Vitamin D is essential for your for muscle. And this is particularly your type 2 muscle fibers, which are your fast twitch muscle fibers. So they're important for explosive movements, power, even catching your balance. And with deficiency, we always want to supplement. I usually don't recommend supplementing unless you've had your blood tested and you know where you lie, because I usually tailor the vitamin D level or the vitamin D recommendation with the supplement to the level in the blood. But again, this is really important, especially for muscle and what we see with these athletes as muscle slowly starts to decline. I've talked a lot about the right stuff. This is just your electrolyte supplement. Super, super salty. I kind of call it the big guns. So if you're in extreme weather or you need your salty sweater, this is your answer. And you can just put it in a bottle of water. Okay, I have one more page of supplements. Joint and inflammation. Vitamin D, I've already talked about that, the role of vitamin D in inflammation. Fish oil. Fish oil is great for a few reasons. I mean, it's important for muscle health. It's such a great anti-inflammatory. I love this Nordic Naturals Omega D3 Sport because it combines fish oil with vitamin D at a maintenance level. And so I have no problem with athletes supplementing up to a maintenance level of vitamin D. And that's about 2,000 international units or IUs, nothing more than that. But yes, great supplement to help reduce inflammation in the body and even provide more joint mobility and flexibility. So that's another benefit. Thorn, this is the first time I've talked about this one. This is curcumin. I'm not sure if anyone is familiar. It comes from turmeric, which is literally one of the most anti-inflammatory spices that you can probably buy. But they turn it into a supplement, and it is incredible because it helps support a healthy inflammatory response in the body. So it can be beneficial to reduce inflammation. even joint inflammation like osteoarthritis, something like that. I do kind of call this the big guns though, because it is pretty potent. Tart Cherry, 100% tart cherry juice is incredible for reducing inflammation. It's high in anthocyanins. I don't know if anyone's heard of that word. It's an antioxidant that reduces inflammation in the body. So this is something great, especially like if an athlete is, a lot of our athletes used to add them to their recovery shakes. So you could do something like that. If there's muscle soreness, you want to speed up just kind of the healing process, you could use some tart cherry juice. It still has a lot of calories, so athletes that are struggling with weight, I probably wouldn't recommend that. All right, let's talk about sleep and recovery. Tart cherry is on there again, and that's because, as I mentioned earlier, it's a natural source of melatonin, so it can help someone get into that deep sleep. Magnesium, we already talked about that a little bit and how that's supportive of a calm mind, muscle relaxation. And then this one. These are the big guns for sleep. Som Sleep, I don't know if anyone's heard of them. I know a couple of PGA Tour golfers use them. We have original and sugar-free. This actually is great for athletes that are traveling a lot. Maybe their circadian rhythm's off, experiencing jet lag. So something like this could be extremely beneficial. I don't recommend ever consistently taking a supplement that has melatonin. This does have melatonin in it. It also has L-theanine, that calming amino acid, and it has magnesium as well. So it has a few sleep-enhancing nutrients that are great for just making sure that an athlete just gets that deep sleep that they need. All right, I think this is my last slide. So what would the supplement timeline look like? I kind of went minimal here because there's a time and a place for supplements, and I kind of just pulled out a couple of maybe the ones that a golfer might use. So hydrating really well with breakfast. They didn't want to go, all the way with the multivitamin. So they wanted to just do a small pack of the athletic greens. So athletic greens are great, so you are getting a wide variety of nutrition in just one pack that you can just throw into water and drink it with your breakfast. And then they're also doing the omega sport. So they're getting some fish oils to help reduce inflammation along with vitamin D, which also is important to help or vitamin D is really important to make sure that the immune system and inflammation are being regulated in the body properly. We always want to take those with breakfast or lunch with a meal because it helps the absorption of fish oil and vitamin D. Take it with fat. Recovery. This athlete did not want to have a recovery meal. They chose to do some whey protein in a shake and maybe grab like a banana or something like that to make sure you're getting carbohydrate. Because remember, those two pieces that are important are your protein and your carbohydrate. One is making sure those muscles are recovering properly, and your carbohydrate is replenishing glycogen. That's the used up carbohydrate that you use for energy. All right, so we'll skip here to sleep. And they do have a snack before bed, so that's good to make sure they don't get hypoglycemic. And so this athlete's struggling a little bit with their sleep. So we actually added a couple supplements here. We did 100% tart cherry, again, because it helps with inflammation, but it also helps with sleep because it's a natural source of melatonin. And they add a little bit of magnesium to it. And what that does is that's going to help an athlete fall asleep, and then the melatonin keeps an athlete in deep sleep. So they'd be doing actually different things. Any questions about that?
Yeah, well, so
You're up, Thor.
I know. So last night we were kind of going over the timeline and stuff, and I had this nightmare that we're going to get to 3 o'clock and I was going to run out of things to say. And and that definitely didn't happen. So at this point, we're going to stand up. You're going to be able to supplement or try some of our supplements. We also have some snacks over here as well, but we're just going to take a 15-minute kind of breather break, get up, get some water, all that kind of stuff. So now we're kind of transitioning here into the additional pillars for golf performance other than just nutrition. So I after I got my PGA card and I was elected into the PGA, I wanted to be this golf fitness specialist, but all I had was my TPI certification. And I knew I needed more. And so that's when, like I said, I decided to get my master's degree in exercise science. And through that, I took every other certification you could possibly imagine, from speed development to strength and conditioning to, I mean, it's to a point where I don't even want to put a pump on there, honestly. But it was a great experience. It was truly a great experience. But what I left out of it is that there's so many things out there that it needs to be simplified. And it needs to be the performance aspect that's going to be my methodology, what I believe in, what I want to teach the others, has to be applicable for all golfers. All right. It can't be, it has to be something that can grow and expand upon individually, but is broad enough and simple enough that can be scaled, that you can apply and can affect as many golfers as possible. So that was my goal when writing my performance prescriptions, whether it's through nutrition, exercise, diet, all those kind of things. So things to consider specifically about golfing athletes that is unique compared to any other athlete out there. And don't get it confused. You are all athletes. You are all golfers. You are all athletes. You should treat yourself as such. Okay. So some considerations. One, most of our golfing athletes have limited or no off season. Okay. So whether it be your seasonal golfers down here who then go up north and continue to play golf, if it's your junior golfers who continue to play golf all year round or after they're ready to specialize, or if it's a professional golfer, that it is a unique professional sport where there truly isn't an off season. All right. They are day in, day out, and week out working out on tour. And what this means is segmented training is not ideal. And what segmented training is for those of you who are in the exercise field or have worked with a personal trainer, is things like strength cycles or things like back and bi days or leg days, like those kind of things. This segmented training is not ideal for your golfers because you will only perform well in a segmented setting, right? If we're in our off season working on strength so we can then perform well and be stronger for the golf season, well, you're not going to be stronger in the golf season because you're only strong in the off season. So this segmented training is not ideal for golfers because of their limited off season. It is ideal for other athletes, like baseball players, basketball players who get structured off-season time. That segmented training actually does work. But for most of our golfing athletes and the general population, the segmented training is not ideal. There's a mix of many physical demands for our golfing athletes. So the demands of the high-powered golf swings in the swing incorporates all 10 physical attributes. So cardiovascular, respiratory endurance, that's us walking golf. Stamina, strength, flexibility, power, and speed. There's no way you can disagree that when you watch Roy McIlroy hit that drive this weekend, he wasn't explicitly demonstrating strength, flexibility, power, and speed, as well as coordination, agility, balance, and accuracy. So us as golfers, we are not a power specific or a speed specific. We are really a combination, a hybrid of all 10 of these physical attributes. Other things to consider: travel obligations for those PGA professionals. Lots of factors that you cannot control, so you have to be in control of those things that you do have control of. You cannot let things like travel or things that, like we talked about with our nutrition timeline, affect us. That's going to affect our game. So we have to nail down those habits, routines, as well as multi-day events where most other sports are simply 2-3 hours long. Golf is multiple days. And this is golf is truly a marathon and not a sprint. And so when looking at the golf specific athlete, the high effort output, we can't be putting extreme effort so that we can't do it for a 4-day period for those PGA professionals, or even for our average golfers. Most golfers don't play just once a week. For our people we see at our country club, they're playing 3-4 times a week. So it's very important to understand that golf is a marathon and not a sprint. So I had a lot of influence from many different certifications, but one of them I took had this 100 words of fitness. And I think it really hit home with me because it was really simple. So I decided to write golf performance in 100 words. And this is in its essence, what I believe in 100 words or less. If you're wondering what my whole methodology is, it's this right here. And I have it broken into 5 different parts here. So the first part here, eat meat and vegetables, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, no sugar. Keep intake levels to that. Will support exercise, but not body fat. You follow that right there, you are going to be a very healthy individual. You will be doing 90% of what Ryan has been talking about. And if you follow that right there as well, you'll be able to add the supplements that you have on your table and actually feel the benefits from them. However, if this is not at the core and the base of your nutritional standpoint, meat and vegetables, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, no sugar, you're eating lots of processed foods, you're not getting the necessary meats you need, many of these supplements are not going to be benefiting you. But this is a nice, simple way to look at it. Second part here is the physical aspect of golf, and I believe in my swing methodology as well as training. Practice and master the golf swing basics of grip, alignment, posture, sequence, rhythm, and tempo. Similarly, master the basics of movements: pull, press, hinge, squat, midline stability, balance, rotate, speed, power, and flexibility. Prioritize intensity, not volume, through your workouts, 5 to 6 days per week. Keep workouts short and intense to maximize time on course. We'll talk about intensity in a second because I think that word scares people, but it's important to understand what I mean by intensity and how to measure intensity. But all these things we talk about here, grip, alignment, posture, sequence, rhythm, and tempo, as well as push, press, hinge, squat, these are all movements that we are physically demanded in the golf swing, and we should strive to master those through exercise, right? It's not the exercise movements that are going to make you a better golfer, but it's the understanding and virtuosity of those movements which will make you the better golfer. And it's the application of those through, as I'll describe in a second, intensity, that can help you become the best golfer possible. Routine is key to good recovery and needs to be done daily. This is a huge part of golf. You are only as strong as you can recover. When you walk out of the gym, you are actually weaker than when you walked in. It's the way that the science works. We are breaking down muscles so you can then eat good, nutritious food, fall asleep, and wake up stronger the day before. But if you do not have routines for good recovery, and it's not done daily, all of the benefits of exercise and those things that you're trying to do on the golf course will not stick. And lastly, regularly learn and play new sports. This is really applied to those junior golfers because I'm a big believer in applying different aspects and different modalities for those kinds of things. But this right here is really what my entire experience has led me to, is these golf performance in 100 words. So let's talk about this word intensity, right? And exercise. That's the one that people are really big right now with our modern golfer, okay? And so when I'm talking about intensity, the first type of intensity that I'm going to be talking about is this aerobic intensity or training zones here, okay? So you can see zone 1 is easy recovery. Zone 2 is a steady state. Zone 3 is tempo. Zone 4 is basically maximum running. And then zone 5 is as much as you've got, kind of thing. It's important to realize what golf truly is. All right, golf truly is a zone 2 exercise. When you're talking about PGA Tour professionals, okay, zone 2 is 60 to 70% of max heart rate, right? And I've experienced this through Whoop, which I'll talk about in a second, and all that kind of stuff, and measuring my heart rate. But golf is at a PGA Tour level and a performance ladder is a zone 2 exercise. And the great thing about zone 2 exercise is that 180 to 200 minutes per week of zone 2 exercise is one of the most significant factors to cardiovascular longevity and health. All right. So when it comes to basics of golf performance, I am looking for, on a weekly basis, golfers to get 180 to 200 minutes per week of zone 2 training. All right. Now, this does include golf. So if you have, or walking with golfing, should be specific. You have a golfer, a PGA Tour player, who's out there walking several rounds a week. They are getting tons of zone 2 training in there. And that is the baseline, 100%. And they are trying to optimize that zone 2 training. For a lot of our other athletes who either don't walk 18 holes, ride a whole bunch, they are getting nowhere near this 180 to 200 minutes of that zone 2 training a week. All right. Now, this zone 2 training could be in a variety of different ways for those everyday athletes. It could be in the form of riding a bike for 40 minutes. It could be in the form of swimming. It could be in the form of yoga. But what we're looking for is a steady state or something just like you're able to talk while you're doing it. But if you were to exert a little bit more energy, it'd be more difficult to talk. All right. And this right here is the base of all golf performance when it comes to really optimizing it. Because if we can improve this zone 2 steady state, we can improve a golfer no matter what. If I can get them to be at zone 2 and have an efficient heart rate and perform better through golf, that's going to be the foundation of it right too. Before anything, before strength training, before any of that kind of stuff. So this zone 2 training is really, really important. And the best way to get it for a golfer is to start walking golf more often. I'm very fortunate to be part of a club that you actually can walk, and it's awesome. And we are seeing more and more people do it. But if you are going to look at golf as a way to stay fit for the rest of your life, start walking golf more often. So now we're going to get into the aspect of intensity measured through trying to get a person stronger or trying to work on a weakness a little bit more. So when we're talking about strength training in particular, so this is, now we have our layered foundation. We know our person's getting their zone 2 training in, they're getting their baseline aerobics, they're either walking enough or they're implementing other exercise that are low impact, like running or, sorry, not running, but rowing or swimming or something like that. We then can layer strength on top of that. And my rule of thumb for most golfers who are looking to play golf for a very long time is 3x5 for 3x5 of 3x5. What that means is 3 to 5 times a week for 3 to 5 different exercises of 3 to 5 reps. All right. 3 to 5 times a week is how often you should be implementing a strength training program on top of that zone 2 training. All right. So for those people who are really trying to gain strength, 5 times a week. For a person who's just trying to maintain and implement and get better, 3 times a week. 3 to 5 different exercises. When you're looking at a strength-specific workout, you're trying to pick 3 to 5 exercises that you're incorporating or trying to gain strength and that mobility. I'm not picking specific exercises. I'm just saying you should be picking 3 to 5 of them. And 3 to 5 reps, because this is the biggest misconception when it comes to strength training versus muscular endurance training. If you want to get stronger, you have to lift heavy weights. If you are doing light weights for a lot of reps, you are not getting stronger. You are building muscular endurance, which is a different benefit. There's benefit to that. But if you're looking to get stronger, we have to lift heavy weights, which means you're getting to a point where 3 to 5 reps at that weight feels heavy. All right, that 6th rep is difficult to do. So this is my rule of thumb, 3x5 for 3x5 of 3 to 5. The emphasis of these strength trainings should be on compound movements. All right. Now, compound movements meaning multiple joint and multiple muscles working all at one time. I'm just going to use an example of what a compound movement is this squat right here. So you can see the perfect person performing just an air squat, and this is them performing a front squat, so a weighted squat. A squat utilizes not only mobility in ankle, knee, hip, and midline stability, but it also works all of the muscles in your legs, your low back, and your shoulders, okay? Compared to a bicep curl. Bicep curl, single joint, just your elbow, working single muscle, just the bicep, all right? You should prioritize these movements far more than you prioritize isolated movements. Big reason why is because these are more applicable to the demands of golf. Golf is not an isolated movement, it's a dynamic movement. So picking dynamic movements is going to be really important. What I have here is basically the 3 foundations of squat, pressing, and lifting. And these are just a few of what you could pick. There's no such thing as a bad exercise or a bad golf drill. There's just the wrong application of that exercise or that golf drill. Again, emphasizing foundational movements to rotational movements. Golf performance is not just swinging a heavy stick or swinging a light stick really fast. That is a part of it, but it at its core is this 3x5 or 3x5 of 3x5 of compound strength training. Another question I get is, how often should I be working out? All right. And this work to rest ratio is normally very difficult, but this is something that I've taken into consideration for those golfers who are weekend warriors or people who play on tour almost too, because they're always playing at the very end here. So if this is a 7-day week, day 1 through day 7, this is what my recommendation for a golfer who plays on the weekend or is a PGA Tour player is: 3 days on of exercise, 1 day off, 2 days on of exercise, 1 day off. The key thing about these here, so we'd be incorporating both the zone 2 training, we'd also be incorporating the compound strength movement, whatever that golfer needs. But the big factor is that intensity on a week-to-week basis starts high and lowers its way down to our last day. Big reason why is intensity is a major factor when it comes to optimizing sports performance. If you're trying to do adaptation, so trying to grow muscles and trying to gain cardiovascular endurance, you need high intensity. But if you're trying to perform, implementing high intensity strength training or exercising during a tournament day is not a good idea. So when you look at a week timeline, the intensity should start high and work its way low. As a golfer approaches more important golfs, like aspects or season parts of their seasons, whether it be a PGA Tour player or it's the member championship coming up, we're going to decrease this intensity even more so they can optimize their performance. So now, specifically what I'm talking about, intensity. So intensity is this formula right here. So I'm a big believer in that you should be able to prove your methodology of how that person is improving and all that kind of stuff. So this right here, which is power or intensity, is equal to force times distance divided by time. All of the workouts that I do, I can basically create this algorithm with any movement and any implication of how I'm doing it to get an intensity level. All right. Let's use an example of what I think a strength day for a high intensity would look like. All right. So again, no bad exercises, just wrong implications of it. So I'm going to be utilizing the exercise of barbell squats, which is where I'm putting a barbell on my back, I'm squatting down to the ground, and I'm standing up. I'm doing this exercise because I want to gain leg strength, right? Following my 3x5 for 3x5, I'm doing 5 reps of 5 sets of this. No more, no less. I'm trying to do 3x5 for 3x5. I'm picking a heavy weight, so this is 80% of my max, and I'm giving myself 1 minute of rest. This in total would take me 10 minutes to complete. All right, so I would work up to my weight, I'd find my 200 pounds, 5 reps, rest a minute, 5 reps, rest a minute, etc. Take me 10 minutes long. I can plug all of this information into my intensity algorithm. So this right here is the distance traveled. All right, so that's D. When we look back at this one right here, is D, distance traveled, 6.25 feet, because my squat, I travel from 2.5 feet down and up, times 200 pounds, which is what I'm moving, divided by the total duration, gives me this number right here, which is my intensity number. All right, compared to a sample strength day of a low intensity. So again, I'm picking a weight that is more moderate, 50% of my max, 8 reps, but I'm giving myself 2 minutes of rest in between. So my total time increases, the distance didn't change, the weight changed, divided by how many seconds I did it. You can see this is now 10.2 or 0.41 pounds per second. So you can see this is a much more intensive exercise day than this was. However, they did the same movements and we did roughly the same reps. It was pretty similar in weight. However, using this algorithm, I can prove that this was a more intense day than this was right here. Now, I know this is a lot of knowledge up here, right? But how does this all apply to us? So looking at exercise from an intensity standpoint can really help you figure out how to do exercises rather than what's the perfect exercise for me. So this is a basic graph of how you would chart those intensity scales, okay? So when I'm looking at power and strength and exercise movements like this at a very high intensity, this is power, this top room right here is power, and this is time. When I'm training for strength, if I were to input the intensity, I would make all of my marks relatively up here because they are high intensity for a short amount of time. When I'm looking at strength training or somewhere in between, so that would be like my low intensity day. That took me a little bit longer, so that's more in this range right here. And I didn't do as high of intensity, so now I'm down here. And then when I'm looking at my zone 2 training days, which I can still input the algorithm into and all that stuff, but that would be all the way over here. So what happens is you create this graph. You can input exercises and you get this graph right here. And what this represents is all the different aspects of fitness that we talked about: strength, speed, power, endurance. And if we all did the same workouts, we could all figure out our intensities and we would all have a very different graph from one another. And this graph is where I'd be able to say where you need to work on and where your weakness is. Different than many other tour professionals out there who just do a movement screen and feel that, oh, there's limitation in the shoulders or anything like this. This is a much different way of looking at golf performance in a holistic approach, where we can then identify specifically what area is in the most need. Lots of times we'll see players who are great in an anaerobic state, but struggle with the strength state. So that's when we start working on that intensity or that pathway. Again, this graph is unique to each and every single one of us. However, our goal is to create the most efficient trend down possible. We don't want to see ones where our strength is low, or if we get this low strength and a high bubble and no aerobic capacity. So what we're really trying to do is be able to graph where a person is on this, and then I can start working specifically on which one they need to work. Now, this is someone in particular. So we have exercise 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're graphing it. You can see their trend, their work capacity right here. And this is really where I believe golf performance lives, is our ability to push this work capacity higher and higher in all aspects of fitness. So whether it's strength training, the mid-range power, or that cardiovascular, we're always trying to push it in this range right here. So this is, again, a very high level, a very different way of looking, but it's a way of treating golf as more than you should just stretch and work on, and you have limitations in your rotations or anything like that. Because we as golfing athletes need to understand that we are a lot more than just how our body moves. It's also how we utilize power. And so this is a graph that I work with a lot of those high level players, and at a standpoint where we can really identify where they need to work on to increase their power output. This is all great information for them, and I can really get a person a lot stronger and a lot more efficient in all these areas. But I think the one that is going to help everyone here the most is the recovery aspect. And so this is the one that I, again, believe wholeheartedly in, that each one of us here can make a huge impact, not only for our golfers, but for ourselves as well. So when we're talking about fundamentals for golf recovery, we're talking about daily recovery performance optimization protocols. So these are things that we do every single day to optimize our sleep, to optimize the way we're intaking nutrients and doing all these kind of things. And so the ones I'm going to be talking about today is, of course, that sleep optimization, HRV regulation, NDSR or NSDR, which is non-sleep deep rest, breathing protocols, and then icing heat. Has anyone ever seen this before? Seen the screen or anything like that? Anyone seen this thing I'm wearing on my hand as well? So yeah, you're wearing one as well. Yeah. So this is called a Whoop, and it has totally taken over the PGA Tour. It is a device that measures not only similar things to a Fitbit, whether it's steps or how much movement you've had, and gives you a baseline of calories burned, but it also tracks your sleep. So you wear it, it's got no watch, no nothing, doesn't beep or buzz or anything like that, just connects to your phone. But every day you wake up and you get a score of how recovered you are. And this score is created from a lot of different aspects, but mostly what is your HRV? And HRV is your heart rate variability. And so I bring up this because this is something that is really big on the PGA Tour. And I don't know if you knew this as well, but you as a PGA member get discounts on this kind of thing too. So if you have any interest in purchasing a device where you can start monitoring your recovery, you as a PGA professional get discounts on that as well. I've had mine for 2 years, and it is one of the best recovery coaches I've ever had. It keeps me more accountable than anything else I've ever used before, right? And even coaches have coaches, so it's important to be utilizing this stuff. So what is HRV? We all know what heart rate is, which is the rate at which our heart beats every minute. But what people don't know is that there are beats in between our heartbeats, all right? And this variability of heartbeats is what we use to measure how recovered you are. So what you can see here is this person, through their heartbeats, which are these big spikes, had differing times in between them. Small differences, but still differing times. And those averaging time differences was a 67 right here. So this right here is showing that our HRV is calculated as 67. This is again only 4 heartbeats. You can do this over an entire day or an entire minute or entire sleep, right? But why is HRV so important? HRV is representing the difference between your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous system. All right, so this goes back to the psychology side of things. Our sympathetic nervous system is our fight or flight. That is when we are in a high stress situation. That is when we are fighting for our life kind of things. That sympathetic nervous system is the part of the brain that wants us to run away and save ourselves. The parasympathetic nervous system is the part of the nervous system where we're really calm. This is the part where we're very comfortable with ourselves. And this is also where high performance happens, is the parasympathetic nervous system. They find that those who perform at the highest are living in the parasympathetic nervous system. HRV is caused by the 2 competing branches of the autonomic nervous system, sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system. A high HRV means you're getting both strong on and off outputs of your body, and it's highly responsive to your environment. It can quickly shift its energy to fight or flight and to rest and digest, to easily match its surrounding. A low HRV means that your either sympathetic or parasympathetic system is inhibiting one or the other, meaning you're not able to fluctuate between the two. So a person who has a low HRV will not be able to fluctuate in between the two, and is normally because they're not recovered, they're not getting enough sleep, or several different factors. But it is highly proven that a high HRV is key to optimizing your recovery. And this device that I'm wearing is what measures. So now how do we improve? So again, HRV, this is how we figure it out. This is our stimulus. This is our workouts. This is our golf training right here. Our performance decreases because of the stress that we're impacted in, but we recover and we see improvement. It's this HRV that allows us, a high HRV that allows us to see this improvement faster. A low HRV flattens the plateau. So now how do we improve HRV, which is how do we recover better? How do we get all this kind of stuff? So here's some key ones right now. Intelligent training, don't overdo it. Don't push too hard for too many days without giving your body an opportunity to recover. Back to the first thing I talked about. 3 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 1 day off. And prioritizing intensity rather than volume. Lots and lots of exercises, prioritizing one movement more than all of those. Hydration, better hydrated you are, the easier your blood is to circulate and deliver oxygen and nutrients to your body. aiming to drink close to 1 ounce of water per pound of body weight each day is a good goal. Avoid alcohol. This is a huge one. It's the first thing that happened when I started wearing this thing, is I could see after one drink, my HRV would drop significantly. I mean, one drink, it has a massive impact on how much I sleep, exactly like when I fall asleep, and when I wake up, how recovered I am. That's the number one thing that you're gonna find from wearing the Whoop and monitoring your HRV, is that alcohol is gonna have a really big impact on it. Steady, healthy diet. Poor nutrition has adverse effects on HRV, as does eating at unexpected times. Something that I wanted to jump on earlier, but I didn't get the chance. The tournament day timeline and the supplement timeline are great for tournaments, but I also think they're great for off days as well. We kind of got into that a little bit with like how many calories and all that kind of stuff. But for most people, you could be utilizing that almost on a day-to-day basis. And for junior golfers in particular, the ones who I'm trying to introduce this to, people who struggle with it the most are the ones who don't have a steady, healthy diet. They're the ones who only care about their diet when it's a tournament week. And those are the people who normally struggle the most when it comes to implementing these practices, right? So it's more of a lifestyle than it is a tournament week, how we should be living. The more that we can turn this into a lifestyle, the easier it's going to be. Quality sleep. So it's not just the amount of sleep that you get that matters, but also the quality and consistency of your sleep. The other interesting thing about wearing the Whoop that I got to experience was I would get some nights 8.5 hours to 9 hours of sleep, but would have a really poor recovery score. And the big thing behind that was I wasn't following suit with all of these other things. I was probably training a little too hard. Maybe I didn't get enough water. Maybe I had one drink that night. But even though I got 8+ hours of sleep, I still had a negative recovery score or a poor recovery score. Through optimizing these things right here, I actually get around 6.5 to 7.5 hours of sleep a night, and I can wake up 100% recovered. But only because I'm implementing all of these practices right here, and I understand how it regulates my HRV. And then the last one here, auto-regulation in general. Try to get your body on a constant schedule, in particular with sleep, eating to your aligned circadian rhythm. So that's sun up to sun down, being on this circadian rhythm, not trying to drink caffeine late at night to stay up, is definitely going to help improve HRV. Now, HRV is something that's become really big from the PGA Tour standpoint, not only from Whoop, but also about how can we understand when we get into this sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight, and how can we get ourselves out of it, all right? This right here is called NeuroPeak, and NeuroPeak is a device, a wearable device that will help you train in between those two systems, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. So back to an application with golfers. This is one thing I think we all here could benefit from, and you could teach to your students, is learning how to do some precision breathing to regulate that HRV and get you out of that sympathetic nervous system. So we're just going to do a simple one right now. All right. It's called box. Yes, you got a question?
What did Scheffler have on his arm? Does anybody know what that is?
That's the Whoop. Yep, that's the Whoop. No. So it's the Whoop on a different device. Justin Thomas wears one up there. Nope, it's not that. It's different than that. Yep, Scheffler has it. Yep, Justin Thomas has it. Yep, so this one's all around the whole chest. So this is an exercise that we're going to talk about that can be applied not only for yourself, but your golfers as well. So the first thing I want us to do is to learn how to breathe properly. I want everyone to put their stomach or their hand on their stomach and their hand on their chest. And I want you to take a nice deep breath in. And then one deep breath out. Deep breath in. Deep breath out. One more big deep breath in. Whose hand on their chest moved more than the hand on the stomach? Okay. So when we breathe, there's two different, you can relax now, you guys can breathe. There's two different muscles that we're going to be using to breathe, all right? There's one, which is our chest, which you see a lot in that fight or flight system, right? You see this a lot in those people who are in that really high intensity fight or flight system. The one that our body was built to breathe in and is used for the parasympathetic nervous system is our diaphragm down here. So you can see when I take my breath, I'm breathing in from my diaphragm and out from my diaphragm. And the way it works is it pulls the air into your lungs rather than into the chest up here. All right. So the first thing is learning how to breathe through your diaphragm. So let's just do again 3 deep breaths, breathing into our stomach. So big inhale, big exhale. Big inhale, big exhale. One more, big inhale, big exhale. Awesome. So now that we're diaphragmically breathing, which is the way we were meant to breathe, most of you probably chest breathe because you just live in a state of sympathetic. But to get us into that parasympathetic, now that we're diaphragmatic breathing, we can actually apply. So what this does is the device simply just measures which one you're breathing more out of. It's just a little metronome almost that just tilts one way or tilts the other, right? If you're diaphragmically breathing, it's going to tilt this direction and it's going to measure it and all that kind of stuff. So that's all the device does, but it also does heart rate and all this kind of stuff. Now, so the precision breathing application is actually going to be the way that you breathe. All right. So when you breathe in, you raise your heart rate. When you breathe out, you lower your heart rate. So what we're going to do is something called box breathing. Box breathing is the way that you can get from fight or flight sympathetic to a relaxed parasympathetic. So we're just going to kind of follow along. Again, you put your hand here and your hand here, just make sure you're breathing in the right direction. But we're going to inhale for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to hold for 4 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Now you're going to exhale for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Hold for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Inhale for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Hold for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Exhale for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Hold for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Relax. So this box breathing technique is what they'll train you through this NeuroPeak. But this application right here, I have taught it to numerous high school players as a way, and I've even hooked them up to a heart rate monitor. I've gotten them to jack their heart rates and just completely get into that sympathetic nervous system. Using this box breathing technique, we can get them back to their original heart rate in a much shorter time than anyone else or any other way of doing it, right? More than just trying to focus on relaxing. This is really important when it comes to golf because we know it's a marathon, not a sprint. When we have that bad shot, when we have that situation where we're kind of in that fight or flight, we need strategies in between our shot to get ourselves back into our parasympathetic nervous system. I did send a video of all of Scotty Scheffler's round shot by shot to each one of my junior golfers or those high school players because I wanted them to see that he made a couple mistakes, but he never made 2 mistakes in a row. That was the biggest thing that really changes from a good round to a great round is they don't allow themselves to make those 2 mistakes in a row. So being able to apply this, not only is this going to help your HRV, but it's also going to help you regulate those emotions throughout your round. Another one is this non-sleep deep rest. So things like this is incorporating aspects of your day to decompress and to rest. That's different than just taking a nap or anything like that. One of the biggest things that get us into a fight or flight, parasympathetic, sympathetic, auto regulation on a day-to-day basis is our phones and computers. Those things are not what we were meant to be looking at as human nature. They create a lot of stress on our system. So spending 10 minutes away, doesn't have to be more than 10 minutes away, of just silence and box breathing can really lower yourself and get you out of that sympathetic nervous system. This is this NDR right here. You can look it up online, and there's things that you can just follow along that are really beneficial to getting you into this more relaxed state. Again, a great technique to raise that HRV. So the fire and ice protocols, which is heat and ice. So when we were talking about ice and sports, the big thing that comes to mind is recovery, injury, right? Have you ever heard of this saying, RICE, which is rest, ice, elevate, and something else. But it was actually the guy who invented it took it back a few years later, because he found that icing and an injury standpoint, the inflammation that comes from injury is actually a really great response to that and can have a lot of benefits. So when you get that injury, you shouldn't necessarily ice it right away, okay? However, ice nowadays has actually been introduced as a way to regulate that HRV. So the first thing is sauna. So saunas are a thing you're going to be seeing a lot more of in the PGA Tour performance recovery protocol. So sauna is a great stress regulation. It brings in HRV regulation and detoxification of our body, okay? This is a great daily procedure. If you're able to get a membership at an LA Fitness or anything like that, getting into a sauna is a great way to get that non-sleep deep rest, to do this HRV training, to really help you get out of this super high stress sympathetic into a parasympathetic nervous system. So saunas are something that I would definitely recommend a lot of those people who are trying to optimize recovery for, as well as ice baths, not in the sense of you're injured and you want to be hurting less, but as a way to regulate HRV. Again, HRV regulation goes from sympathetic high stress to parasympathetic low stress. If you get into even a cold shower or anything like that, you will spike that HRV into that fight or flight system. But through those breathing techniques and relaxing, you would be surprised that 3 minutes of a cold shower, by the end of it, you're in a very relaxed state. And what you did right there was a recovery protocol simply just to lower your HRV. So these things are very, very new topics, and you are going to be seeing a lot more of them in the PGA Tour because they understand the importance it has on HRV regulation. And if we can get good HRV regulation, high HRV, we're going to have high recovery, and that's going to lead into more performance optimization. So all in all, these are some new and very interesting topics, and I don't want to dive too deep into them because I can, but these are things we should be looking at when it comes to applying it to all these aspects because, again, recovery is key. So yeah, our last one now. So after we've talked about the junior, we've talked about our high performance athletes. So now it's time to talk about the largest population of golfers, which is our retired golfers. So I'm gonna let Ryan dive into that.
That should be fun. All right, are we ready? Are we ready to do one more nutrition presentation? Okay, so the cool thing about the retired golfer, they really are kind of the role model of a successful aging. I mean, to be able to, be at this fitness level, to continue playing their sport is pretty incredible. However, aging is going to get to them, and there are some concerns that we still have with their performance that we should be aware of. First, starting with chronic dehydration. This is completely different than what we've learned about junior golfers and even the modern golfer. With our retired golfers, we often will see a reduced thirst sensation. And what I mean by that is the dehydration usually kicks in, or thirst usually kicks in around when we're 1% to 2% dehydrated. And in this group, it might take even, the body's gonna be even more dehydrated when thirst is going to kick in. So these athletes are gonna have to be a little bit more diligent with maintaining their hydration and probably already have a plan in place, but that's just something to be aware of. The other reason why we might see chronic dehydration in these athletes is that with a loss of lean muscle mass, which we see with aging, right? We've talked about that a little bit. We see a drop in total body water. And the main reason being that we store glycogen, or that carbohydrate, that's what we use for fuel, in our muscle. And as we, so glycogen stores water with it. So as we lose muscle mass, and then we lose glycogen, we also lose this, a chunk of our reservoir of body fluid, basically. So these are two things that we're kind of seeing in the retired golfer. Nothing to be too alarmed about, but just something to be aware of, that we need to make sure that these athletes really do have a hydration plan or hydration strategy in place, because we know too, dehydration and heat illness can be an issue. So I just want to pay attention to that. Undernutrition. So around the age of 60, 65, we do see some appetite regulation issues, and these can be hormonal alterations. Typically with the hunger hormone, it's called ghrelin. So what can happen is there can be early satiety. These athletes might not be able to finish a meal, and they might actually have a poor appetite. It's at some meals when they sit down. So that can set them up for, if they're not able to finish a meal, they're not able to meet their protein goals and get adequate nutrition, that can set them up for undernutrition and potentially nutrition deficiencies. There's also a reduced ability to absorb nutrients. And this is for a variety of reasons. Not every case is going to be the same, but typically there is a shift in the gut microbiome. I don't think I've talked about the gut microbiome much at all, but these are the bacteria in our gut that help us digest and absorb our food. And they are completely essential in all of us. They help us regulate the inflammatory response of the body. They're also crucial for our immune system. And like I said, they really do help us absorb our nutrition. And they do even produce some vitamins as well, some of our B vitamins. So this is why we might be a little bit concerned here with athletes that potentially are not meeting their protein or nutrient goals. This is a tough one. Body composition changes. We already know with aging muscle, we start seeing lean mass losses or muscle losses with age, and that really starts around 30 to 40. So the modern golfer might see some of that. Where it really does kind of advance into more like a sarcopenia or muscle atrophy is when we hit 60. It's certainly, we almost struggle to keep muscle on. So that's where it's really important to utilize training and then making sure you're hitting your protein goals to really minimize any further loss of muscle. With losses of muscle mass, we have a slower metabolism, which is great because then we start putting on body fat. So how much lean muscle we have, it's kind of related to our basal metabolic rate, or how many calories we're burning just sitting here. So the more muscle we have, the more calories we burn. So over time, as we're losing muscle mass, we're actually going to lower that metabolic rate and burn less calories while we sit, which is why we will see over time an increase in body fat. But we can always maximize making sure we're hitting all our nutrient timing, our recovery, getting our protein intake. That will help us as best we can to really maximize muscle gains and maintain what we do. Bone loss. So there's an increase in bone resorption as well. What that means is basically we're just breaking down our bone, and bone is really interesting because it is over our lifespan. We are kind of building it and breaking it down. But as we age, we do have a little bit of an impairment of bone metabolism. That's for a variety of reasons, primarily hormonal changes as we age. We might also, because of reduced ability to absorb nutrition, that can also cause issues with bone if we're not able to get enough calcium. And that can be for a few reasons. I mean, and we'll get into some of the inflammation, how inflammation can negatively impact absorption of nutrition. But a lot of times it's based on calcium absorption as well in the gut. All right, so sports injuries, can't get away from those. Typically, we'll see those modern golfer into the retired golfer. They might be new injuries. These might be old injuries that have been aggravated. Where I typically get concerned with sports injuries in this group is that it's an injury that won't seem to heal. So this injury just keeps coming back. It's not healing well or not healing properly. So it's really, my job as a sports dietitian is kind of like dive in and figure out what's going on there. Is it a specific nutrient deficiency? Has there been blood work? What's the diet look like? Are they getting enough protein? I'm literally asking all these questions. So I think that's, yeah. And then also, I think I brought up earlier too, vitamin D. What's the vitamin D level like? Because vitamin D is one of the nutrients that is most related to muscle and bone injuries. So if there's a deficiency, a lot of times with some of our athletes, before we did testing, a lot of our athletes that had muscles or soft tissue and bone injuries, we actually, when we tested, we realized they were vitamin D deficient. So I think it's just important to always kind of keep that in the back of your mind from a sports injury standpoint. And then asking questions about the diet. I brought that up earlier with the modern golfer, just making sure that they're meeting their nutrient timing, they're getting all the, the fresh fruits and vegetables, things that are going to help heal this injury. And it really depends on the injury too. That's where a sports dietitian can help because, the recommendations for, maybe a fracture versus a soft tissue injury versus a cartilage injury is going to be different. So just something to think about. Increased inflammation. This just seems to keep getting worse as we get older, right? We can't get away from inflammation. It's just there. And this is chronic inflammation, okay? Not acute inflammation, AKA inflammaging. That's what all the science is calling it now. And that's just the inflammation of aging. It's basically like, all right, we know this is going to happen, but what can we do about it? What kind of things can we do about it? And it's actually a very complicated process because you have, the environment interacting with your genetics, and how they interact together can really impact what kind of inflammation that we see. Inflammation can present in so many ways in an athlete. It could be a health condition, like hyperlipidemia, which is like a high cholesterol. It could be hypertension, with high blood pressure. It could also be, gastritis or gut dysbiosis. And what I was talking about before with gut dysbiosis, think of it as all of your gut bacteria that help you digest and absorb your nutrition. They're a huge part of your immune system. They help regulate inflammation. And if there's a shift towards your friendly bacteria into the more unfriendly bacteria, that alone can create problems in the gut. That can create inflammation. That can also reduce your ability to absorb nutrition. So there's a lot of inflammation that we're up against in this area, and I think it's just important to know, the different categories of and also how we can manage it. Because a lot of times a referral to a sports dietitian for just some personal lifestyle modifications might do wonders for this athlete. Thor, I think actually you brought up working with an athlete with diabetes and mentioned that there was some reversal there. So a lot of times it can be reversed with good solid fitness and nutrition. All right, so what does fueling look like? With our junior golfers, we talked about growth and development, right? With our modern golfers, we talked a lot about maintaining. So that's the area we're maintaining. Now what we're trying to do is we're trying to minimize losses, right? We want to minimize muscle and bone loss as much as possible while we're keeping our body fat down. So there's a whole bunch of new challenges now. We're going to do this still through a variety of whole foods. Hopefully the athletes aren't avoiding any particular food groups because the more variety in a diet, the better actually. And optimizing protein intake throughout the day. This is so incredibly important along with fitness because we know that muscle is being broken down at a much more rapid rate than our modern golfers. And so we need to protect those muscles, especially if we want to be able to play sport. I know Thor mentioned he wanted to walk the greens till he's 100. I don't know if that's everyone else's goal. But we really do want to make sure that we're hitting all those protein goals for these athletes throughout the day, so that we're optimizing recovery and we're minimizing any kind of muscle and bone loss, because protein is important for bone as well. We're continuing to monitor those vitamin D levels. As I talked about earlier, vitamin D is crucial for muscle and bone health, especially those type 2 muscle fibers that are so important in a golf swing, because those are your power producing muscles. And getting checked annually. I tell all of our athletes we really want to check vitamin D annually, typically in the fall, to make sure. So with sunlight, a lot of us don't actually get our vitamin D from sunlight, especially if we're wearing sunscreen in Florida, because most of us are covering up to protect our skin, right? So a lot of times the best way to get your vitamin D is through a supplement, because there's not a lot of options from food that will get your vitamin D levels high enough. So just being aware of the importance of vitamin D and how to properly supplement. Ensuring adequate intake of calcium. Again, we're seeing a huge amount of bone loss at this age, and it's important if we're going to continue to keep our strength and play as we age, that we are maintaining vitamin D levels and calcium levels. What we're up against here, what we know with our performance concerns that I was just talking about, is that we know we have a reduced ability to absorb some of our nutrition. So this might be an athlete for sure that we might want to pull out the big guns and do a full multivitamin supplement that could benefit to kind of fill in those nutritional gaps. Okay, so macronutrient intake, protein needs are going to be higher. Again, as we age, we're seeing more protein or more muscle losses, and we're going to need protein intake to be higher to really protect those muscles and minimize any kind of muscle breakdown. Lean proteins, especially given the inflammatory state of these athletes, very rare is there an athlete that doesn't have any kind of inflammation going on at this age. But really minimizing any kind of pro-inflammatory fats from animal sources, or even refined grains and packaged foods and things like that. Making sure whole foods are on your plate. This is the best way to really minimize inflammation in the body. And we talked a lot about shifting to a plant-based diet as much as possible. It doesn't mean you have to go vegan or vegetarian, but getting in as many plant-based foods as possible. And especially through your carbohydrates. So, your whole grains, all your starchy vegetables are great options, fruits. Those are all excellent carbohydrate choices. I talked about this actually with every group, is to just maintain basic hydration. Again, this is not for during sport. This is just while you're carrying out through the day, whether it's sitting here, listening to a presentation or walking around. Half your body weight in ounces should be sufficient. Now, if you're outside and you're doing even gardening and things like that, I even recommend following the ACSM guidelines to get some extra hydration. You don't want to dehydrate. Okay, so tournament day fueling. This is going to be really similar to the modern golfer. The biggest change with the retired golfer is we're just boosting up protein, and we're probably going to be pulling back on carbohydrate just because we do typically see those body fat increases. So we want this meal to be high protein, high carbohydrate, lots of fiber from fresh fruits would be a great option. If this athlete is struggling with appetite, doing something like a cold smoothie, liquid protein, that would be a great option. Because it's much easier to get down. You're going to be able to meet your protein and carbohydrate needs to fuel for the tournament, while also not feeling weighted down and heavy. So that's just an option. avoiding high fat meals and high sugar meals. That's really important too, because high fat meals, especially coming from animal sources, are very draining on the body. So we want to make sure that that when we go out to that, or when the retired golfer is out at the tournament, they are able to just maximize their energy level and not feeling heavy or tired. Minimizing sugar as well. We've talked a lot about that. We don't want blood glucose spikes, right? Followed by energy crashes. So maintaining the energy level, or maximizing energy level, I like that word even better. And arriving hydrated. No catch up, right? We don't want to play catch up. We want to arrive well hydrated so we're not tempted to overhydrate and potentially causing more issues there with diluting those electrolytes. And snacking every 3 to 4 holes should be sufficient for this group. Again, this is always individual. Everyone's needs are different. Everyone likes different snacks and different ways to hydrate. So this will be individual. This is just a general guideline. Again, I just want to make sure everyone knows that. 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour, that's going to be consistent across all the levels of aging. And 10 to 20 grams of protein every hour. So we've, again, boosted protein in the snacks. So we're boosting protein during meals. We're boosting protein during snacks. And we're doing everything we can to make sure that this athlete is meeting protein needs, getting enough protein throughout the day so we can minimize any kind of muscle and bone loss. Okay, so fluid recommendations per ACSM, they are a little higher than the modern golfer, typically because we do see so much chronic dehydration. 6 to 12 ounces every 15 minutes. That's what the recommendations are. Electrolytes can be a little tricky with this group, especially if there is some hypertension there, because I wouldn't recommend the right stuff in that situation. It's just too much concentrated sodium. So with high blood pressure, even a coconut water might be a good option. I know we talked about coconut water earlier, and I picked on it because it's low in sodium. But for an athlete that it has hypertension, this actually might be a really good option for them to help with hydration. Or they can, of course, always rely on water and their snacks for their carbohydrate. Okay, here's our timeline. Tweaked this a little bit based on an athlete that I worked with that, appetite wasn't the best in the morning. So we did a Greek yogurt smoothie to boost calcium. And Greek yogurt is so easy to digest. And it's very, very easily, absorbed in the body as well. Not heavy at all. A bunch of mixed berries. So you're getting your antioxidants, your carbohydrate, your fiber, and protein. So this is a great way for an athlete that just can't sit and eat a plate of hot food because they might get too full easily and then not going to be able to meet their needs. So this is an option. Again, we're at the higher protein level, much higher than our other two golfers that we've discussed so far. I've added in there just some of these protein bites. I thought it was pretty cool. I saw protein bites here. I've never met a golfer that doesn't love protein bites. There's so many great recipes on the internet, and you can put whatever you like in there for nut butter. Whether it's peanut butter or almond butter. You can do whole oats. These have 70% or higher dark chocolate. I love that because when you consume dark chocolate, that's about 70% cocoa or higher. You're actually getting a bunch of magnesium, which is that really great electrolyte we've talked about. So that's a good option as well. And then doing the high protein sandwich. I swapped out the jerky for some hard-boiled eggs. I've seen a couple of golfers do that. These Vital Farms, these are really great. These are pasture-raised eggs. You can just slip them in a golf bag and eat them with, some banana to get your carbohydrate and your protein as well. I did this too because soft foods might be a better option. As we age, sometimes some of us might have some issues with our teeth and we're not really happy about gnawing on a piece of tough jerky. So I did a whole bunch of soft foods here. For lunch, we kind of took what we did for the modern golfer, and made it into just a smaller portion. but still kept the protein high. So we're still getting vegetables, we're getting a little less carbohydrate, but this way, this is not going to weigh an athlete down. They can get all their protein needs. And I actually swapped out the berries for watermelon. And I did that for a couple of reasons. Watermelon really doesn't have much fiber. Fiber fills us up really fast. And I didn't want this athlete to get too full of a bunch of fruit without meeting their protein goals with their vegetable chicken rice bowl. So, and I also love watermelon because it's so hydrating. So it's actually going to really boost this athlete's hydration before they go out on the course. Again, we have the protein bites, the high protein sandwich, and for post-tournament or for the recovery meal, we actually, how we tweaked it was we boosted the protein and we decreased the carbohydrate a little bit. So kind of what I did with lunch. So again, I'm kind of preemptively supporting this athlete to make sure that they're not gaining further fat mass or minimize any kind of fat mass gains. So this is a great meal, just nutrient dense, omega-3 fats that's going to help reduce inflammation in the body. So this is a great way to end the day with a meal post-tournament. Again, probably would want one more meal because if bedtime's at 10, probably get in a meal at 7 or something like that. I just didn't have space for that. But this is what the tournament day looks like.
Can you go back there?
Yes, I can.
65-year-old golfer's gonna do this, because we're all about, most of us in here in that range. If I eat that much food, I'm gonna pass out before I get to the 12-hole snack. I mean, is this just like
This is a
big
general.
plated lunch in the middle, around you, you're gonna grab sodium missile and keep on moving, you know?
This
If
is
you're not playing good, you got a Budweiser and keep going. This looks like a lot of food.
It does.
Or like, I mean, it says tournament day. We've all played in tournaments too, they have bananas and apples out there and stuff like that. But we're not gonna have a couple sandwiches in the bag and all that kind of stuff. So it seems like it's not, the post tournament's fine, breakfast is great, pre-coated, but how are we gonna really get any of our golfers to try to get healthier with?
We'll probably start small. That's what we would do with IMG. We would start small and make sure they understand the importance of the snack, because just grabbing a banana, even like a few bananas, you're only getting carbohydrate. And so that's going to give you fuel for only so long. Whereas the protein part, what we're doing is we're looking long-term to make sure we're protecting those muscles as well. Protein's great for satiety, and we're doing it in smaller amounts. Like, for example, a couple hard-boiled eggs, that will give you about 12 grams of protein, and a banana. Something like that.
We do a lot of that. I'm just gonna.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm going to skip it. We're losing a little bit of time, so I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to this right here. So I get what you're saying. There are a group of individuals that have been conditioned to not think like this whatsoever. And tournament day, especially, right? I mean, they're with their friends and all this kind of stuff. So I'm going to bring up, this is actually me in our fitness center here at Will Creek, and this is Mr. Bill Greer in the middle. He's been a client of mine for the last 2.5 years. He actually came to me 3 years ago, so pre-pandemic, and he wanted to get into golf performance, wanted to work out a little bit more, gain a little bit more distance, and I told him everything we talked about today, the training standpoint, eating standpoint, all of those great things. Made him a 6-week plan, golf, fitness. He's like, holy crap, this is a lot, right? He's like, I'll think about this. So I didn't see him for a while. Pandemic hit, and everything was shut down for 6 months. Come back in, lesson books started to open up. See, Mr. Greer is on my list. Sure enough, he was on my schedule for that day. So I'm like, oh great. Pull out his lesson plan. I'm like, he's gonna get back on it, right? And just put it in perspective, he was 76 at this time and probably 20 pounds overweight. And when he walked in, he was wearing the same shirt he was wearing that last day I saw him. And he was absolutely swimming in it. And he lost about 40 pounds, not because of what we talked about, but because he actually developed throat cancer and had to go through 6 rounds of chemo treatment. He came to me that day, no longer wanting to lose weight and gain more distance on the golf course, but in a point where he needed this to play golf. He said, Thor, I don't have enough strength to be on the golf course. I can't make it more than 2 holes. He says, I don't know how to eat because I've been eating through a straw for the last 3 months. That's why I've lost all this weight. And I said, well, this is what we need. This is what we need to get you back to this point, right? And I've seen, he's one of many who have gotten to me, not when they wanted to do it, but when they needed this stuff. And our goal is to introduce this in a way that we intervene before they need it, right? I understand this is a drastic change to a lot of the ways that our retired golfers look at golf. But he now, after implementing twice a week strength training and golf instruction, is in better shape than he's ever been before. I got a video of him doing 6 pull-ups on my phone. 2 years later, he's never done a pull-up in 30 years, and he do 6 of them now. He shot his age twice last year, and he plays and walks 3 times a week. He was the same man who said I couldn't walk more than 2 holes 2 years earlier. And it's a drastic change. I mean, he was retired and ready just to relax the rest of his life. But then that all got swept underneath the rug, right? And so this is really, I mean, the whole theme of my last part there is just us as PGA professionals are the gatekeeper for those retired golfers to continue to play for the rest of our life. And it starts with us taking control of it ourselves and then living that life and hopefully encouraging more people to do it as well. So it's a drastic change. Small steps are key for sure. I mean, we went with very simple things like just taking away soda and taking away that beer at the end of the day and implementing other aspects. And it's a long process, but people will do it and it will have amazing changes to their life.
And potentially too, you know, if bananas are what the preferred fruit is, you know, maybe it's starting small and just adding a little bit of protein with that banana, whether it's, you know, just an ounce of turkey jerky or beef jerky. Maybe it's 1 hard-boiled egg or something like that, or a cheese stick. You know, there's ways to go into it, making small tweaks that can potentially support performance. But athletes that have never done this, they don't know how much better their energy levels could be. So I'm kind of throwing this up here as this is, you know, like ideal, what we could do. But again, one thing everyone has to remember is that every athlete is individual, based on their needs, based on their snack preferences, right? Some athletes might hate bananas and they want an orange. So this was just something I threw up that I wanted everyone to be able to visualize optimally. What does performance fueling look like on the course?
That's what I'm going to be eating at, like when I'm 80, that's for sure. But, and again, I mean, I know we only have about 10 minutes left, so I do want to also talk about how us as coaches can be implementing strategic ways to implement this, not only for our junior golfers, but our retired golfers too. So see, these are 4 skills that I really worked on when I was trying to implement this with those retired golfers. So the first thing we really worked on was identifying negative self-talk. So a lot of these people are going to install it in themselves. This is too hard. I don't want to do this, right? You want me to turn this much in my golf swing. You want me to start eating this much on the golf course. And you got to be able to identify and stop that self-talk as soon as possible, right? So this is a skill that I really worked on, is identifying it. And again, you can't back down. When a person starts with negative self-talk, you got to continue to push at it. Thought stopping. So this is a technique that I use too. So this is one I use with junior golfers a lot, is I'll have them wear a rubber band. Every single negative thought you have on the golf course, you got to switch that rubber band to the other side. All right. Can you go an entire round of golf without switching that band from one side to the other? I had a girl who said she's like, I played 8. She's the nicest girl I've ever met. She's like, I switched that band 42 times in 18 holes. Like, you did? You're Mrs. Smiley over there? And she's like, sure enough, it was just all in her head. And she was so proud the day that she won her first tournament. She's like, Lord, I did it twice, 2 times. I switched it. That was it. Right? And so these are techniques as well that we can apply for those retired golfers. That negative self-talk, we have to stop that through simple techniques. Of the rubber band, I think, is a great one. Goal setting. Don't know what it is about the retired golfer, but they're terrible at making realistic goals for themselves. And it's probably because they've had great experience, that they've been super high achievers and all this kind of stuff. But at the same time, we have to set these SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound. If those goals are not SMART, then we won't be able to hit them and they're going to feel really bad. when I was introduced to Bill Greer, I did not say, hey, we need to start playing once a week and all this kind of stuff. I said, hey, here's a bucket of 25 golf balls. Let's just go putt for a little. Right? And the next week I brought 30. The next week I brought 40. I was like, hey, what do you feel about chipping today? Sure, let's do some chipping. All right, let's start off with 15 chips, right? So you have to set those goals for them, because if they set their own goals, you've probably seen this before with someone who comes into a lesson and hits a great golf shot, and then they go the next day and hit 500 golf balls, and their hands are blistered and never come back out, right? So, I mean, setting the goals for them and it being smart is really important. And the anxiety management is really key too. I mean, with that retired golfer, one-on-one time is a must almost. Group settings are really tough. I worked hard to take individual people to try and get them into a group setting, but they just do better in an individual standpoint, from an anxiety standpoint. Women are great. Women love the group fitness stuff and all that kind of stuff. Men, not so much. They are not about it. But so these right here are skills for implementing that. We understand that this is, again, we're talking about a lot of ideals. And unfortunately, in our life, most of our population does not live at ideal. We live at okay, and then we get a little sick, and we go to the doctors, and they bring us back to okay. But this is the methodology and thought process that, what if we didn't just live okay? What if we lived better than okay? Right? And these are the things that you have to be implementing to continue to live better than okay every single day. You know, also better than okay is making a little bit more money. So this is how we're going to end it here too. The return on investment when it comes to golf performance is $81 per hour was the average cost of a 1 hour golf lesson. This is from 2020. $68 per hour was the average cost of a 1 hour fitness session when the two disciplines were combined together, as referred as golf performance training. In a hybrid program, group, individual, all this kind of stuff, the average individual trainer made $141 per hour, right? That's significant difference there, right? That's Ryan and I teaming up together to implement a golf performance program for our clients. This can really benefit not only your golfers, your life, but also your career as well. And then as PGA professionals, we are getting a lot of furthering education. Like I said, Golf Fitness Association of America with those articles, PGA.coach, please register yourself, take the ADM certification, 100% worth it. PGA.com, the Florida section in-person seminar, you made it. Something I wrote up here at a presentation I gave in at the PGA show, and I was like, maybe it'll happen, but we made it. So, and then for the PGM students, that master's degree as well, I think it's going to be a really great opportunity. That's really all the time we have for today. I do appreciate everyone coming in and sitting down and learning, hopefully learning a few new things. This really doesn't end here. We would love to continue the conversation, whether it's in person, via the phone, or anything like that. So at the end here, I'll make sure to pass out my personal phone number and all that kind of stuff. But
We can send it out to everybody as well.
awesome.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah.
So before we leave, I am going to invite Meredith back up here one more time. Thank you guys.
Well,